1, 2. Tim? 1, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, don't forget the red recorder, John.
It's happened before. Yeah, let's go. It's Saturday, the 8th of October 2022, and this evening's first ever live show. We are joined by ex-Blackpool legend Gary Taylor-Fletcher over there, who will be reminiscing about his life and times at Blackpool FC. Raggy and Tim will be then taking centre stage. They're going to be telling us about the trials and tribulations, about the boycott years, being sued, etc. And we'll also be running the rule over the Watford match, which took place this afternoon at Bloomfield Road. And we thankfully won 3-1. Right, hi everyone, all you millions of people out there, just try and get a bit of a seat, it's very busy, so thanks everybody for coming this evening, really appreciate you taking the time and effort to come and see the show. So, a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today. The introduction about us, obviously. Everyone knows about the Seasiders Pod. Put your hand up if you don't listen to this show. I'm looking at Viv Taylor-Fletcher over there. But I guess you know Viv, given the fact that Gary's been on the show a couple of times and he's been an excellent guest. So yeah, well, that's going to be the first thing we're going to be doing, the Watford match, which thankfully we won 3-1. Then the main man, Gary Taylor-Fletcher. After that, he's going to be talking about his time, the 2009-10 promotion season, obviously in the Premier League and Wembley. Then we're going to have a quick break and we're going to be talking about the boycott years with Raggy, Tim. They're going to tell us about their dalliances with the Oystons. Raggy's got some great tales to tell, so looking forward to hearing those. Finally, we're going to have an audience Q&A where you guys can all come, nip up, grab the mic, ask us a question, ask Fletcher a question about his time at the pool. Right, guys, so do you want to all introduce yourself? Nick's here. Welcome, Nick.
Good evening, John. Good evening, everyone. It's great to be here.
Mitch, not your real name. Matt, does everyone know his real name?
Not interested.
Evening.
Matt, tell us about your name, Mitch. Where does it come from?
It comes from, I started writing a blog about 3 years ago and I couldn't think what to call it, so I thought I'd call it Mitch Cook's Left Foot, because Mitch Cook was my first ever favourite Blackpool player because I liked his name. I thought I'll change the name later, and I didn't realise that I'd then be on a podcast answering to the name Mitch Cook. To the point where I've actually had one of Mitch Cook's ex-girlfriends send me a message believing I am Mitch Cook, and then I've had to explain that I'm not Mitch Cook, and then she thought that meant that Mitch Cook was dead or something, and it all got quite confusing. But I'm here.
You could have, if you were badly intentioned, you could utilise that opportunity, couldn't you?
I could have, but I think Mitch is a few years more senior than me, so I don't know whether I wanted to, John.
What does she look like?
There was no profile.
Okay, yeah, that says it all, doesn't it? Tim's here. Welcome, Tim. Good to have you here.
Evening. I thought I'd made the effort to dress up tonight, unlike the rest of the panel.
Come on, Anthony, give us a twirl. So, regular listeners to the panel realise Tim is a Michael Portillo wannabe.
Well, I thought I'd live up to my caricature tonight, and so I've got the old tangerine pants on and the blazer. So just for tonight.
Right, let's get going then. Watford match reaction this afternoon at Bloomfield Road. Hands up who went. Pretty much everyone in here. Where were you, sir? Fair enough. Well, you missed a good one today, didn't you? Right. Right, excellent. Right, team lineup. Who can remember it? Because I normally do this via Twitter, and I've not got mine. There's no internet in here, so.
Maxwell in nets.
Yeah.
Thompson left back. Marv and Thornley. Connolly at right back because Gabriel's injured. Patino right.
There's a
and
decent
Carey.
story around the injury to Gabriel, by the way. It was his birthday, and I think he was allegedly he's injured himself falling off a stool, as you do. So I think Appleton, he just said, did he say it was like the fourth time ever that he's had somebody miss a game for a non-football related injury in the whole of the time he's been involved in football. So it's incredible, isn't it?
Oh, we're a bit unlucky at the moment, aren't we, with injuries? Who else was in? Corbeano,
Gary Medine.
of course, your favourite.
Yacey,
Yates.
you missed all the midfield out, which was
Tino.
And we saw Sonny Carey come back in for Dougal, with
Yeah.
Dougal being suspended, and then obviously Matthew Wright as well. So Callum even.
Callum Connolly. Right, so we're going to do this very quickly, aren't we? So let's just describe the first half. Nick, what can you remember?
Well, it was a decent start, which has been a bit of a feature, hasn't it? We've had a few games where there's a good 15 to 20 minutes. Difference being this time we managed to score during that period. I might let Mitch talk about the goal. But yeah, it was a bright start. But then after that, it's similar to Norwich really. They then had a lot of possession. I think I saw the stat at half time and it was, I think, 70% possession for them. But yeah, we were still in at half time. Decent goal. Great ball from Thompson. Headed across by Connolly, and Super Gaz did the business.
My second favourite Gary to ever play for Blackpool. See what I did there. To be honest, I thought he'd missed it when he hit it, because it was. I've decided it was a graceful and unorthodox, graceful, intelligent finish. But I think Tim described it best before as he bundled it in somehow.
He tried to miss it, I think, was the expression I used.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've gone 1-0 up in the game, but we kind of went in ourselves after that, and it wasn't surprised to see them equalise, given all the silly free kicks we were
Well,
given.
just winding it back a bit, Thompson's taken some stick over the last home game and the way in which he conceded or assisted in the conceding of the goal for Norwich, which was a bizarre forward pass for them. But I've got to say, what a great cross. I think it must have been a 50-yard crossfield pass from defence to the edge of the right box, and fantastic header from Callum Connolly, and the goal machine finishing it. So I think there's an element of redemption, I think, for Thompson there, because I think he was so gutted about the fact that he was effectively responsible for us losing the last home game. Really pleased that he had a very active role in that first goal.
The equaliser from Watford, Nick. Can't do a lot about that. What a strike.
Yeah, it was. It was, again, like you said, a bit of a silly free kick to give away in the first place.
Is there a train pulling off at station 3? What the hell's that?
It's Alistair Campbell's death metal.
Oh, God, that's gone. What were we saying? Brilliant goal from Watford.
Yeah, it was. Sometimes you've got to hold your hands up and say it was a brilliant goal, and it was. Maxwell didn't really have a chance with it. Yeah, and with all the possession they had, you could say they probably deserved it.
And Mitch nearly got kicked out of the ground for fighting with somebody else in the West Stand, didn't you?
Well, sort of.
South
Stand, yeah.
I don't know, I just didn't think it was a free kick, and the bloke behind me said that I was obviously blind if I didn't think it was a free kick, and we had a minor disagreement for 30 seconds, but we made up, and we were all...
Yeah, we should realise he was right, because he played in the West Lancs League, apparently, Anthony. Right, so.
Yeah, which I'd never scaled those heights.
Can everyone hear us all right with that racket going on? Yeah. Right, on to the second half then.
Do you know, half time, we went in, I'm in the Moretti Lounge now, and we went in and we were talking about, Joe was in there, and we were having a chat about what we thought was going to happen second half. And Joe was actually quite optimistic. And I said it's going to be 3-1. But I genuinely thought that Watford were going to win 3-1. The way it had gone in the first half, and particularly the way, they always look sharp every time they got the ball, and we seem to have lost our way a little bit. So to say I was slightly pessimistic coming out in the second half is an understatement, but how wrong you can be.
Yeah. I think the game changed on the substitution, Mitch, of Corbanu. Quite a funny story here. When the substitution was about to happen, my son's down there, Eddie. Who did I say should bring off? Who did I think was having a great game? He doesn't want to say anything. I said maybe you should bring Jerry Yates off.
You're
What do I
manager.
know? I'm his manager. I'm the manager of his under 10. So yeah, I think time to bring Yates off. But thankfully, I'm not the manager of Blackpool Football Club.
I think, Eddie, if he ever tries to bring you off when you're playing for your under 10s football club, you should probably refuse to come off, judging by that.
But Nick, thankfully, as I've said, I'm not the manager of BFC. And Jerry Yates, it's a goal, two absolute quality strikes. And if ever a player deserved to score a brace, it was Jerry Yates giving the effort he's put in the season.
Absolutely, that's what we said. He just deserves it, because every time he plays, he puts such a shift in. Doesn't always get great service, but never stops running. And thankfully, with the first goal, CJ's gone through, and I was screaming at him, "Get your head up," and he did. And a great cross, and Jerry's there to finish it. And it was just, because he just like. Everybody the guy in front of me, I don't know him, we're just hugging each other, like screaming Yates, because he just deserves it. And then the third, he's just full of confidence. That's Jerry back to his best, isn't it? Dinking one way, going the other, giving the keeper the eyes and slotting it home. And absolutely fantastic. And when it was 1-1, Jim, the lad I go with, just looked at me and said, I'll take a point now. And you probably would. Because I know they've not had a great start and sacked the manager like they do, but you look at their squad, they've got individual players that probably cost more than our entire team. So it was brilliant, absolutely fantastic. It made up for Jerry Yates because he deserves it.
Mitch, Jerry's really put the icing on the cake, didn't it? And I wasn't fully appreciative of how good his skill in the build-up to that goal was. I kind of just concentrated on the ball hitting the back of the net, but what a piece of skill that thing he does where he just flicks it from his heel from one side to the other, and what a great goal.
Yeah, and it's the confidence in it, because when he's off form, he still does those things, but he doesn't do them with the intent when he's on form. And there was one thing he was going to do then, which was score, and he did. And I ended up just jumping around going, "He's done it again! He's done it again! He's done it!"
I was doing the same.
And it sounds a weird thing to say, but when you think about how good he was in that COVID season, it's like, it's not a League One goal, but it's like the League One Jerry scoring in the Championship, if that makes sense, because he looked class. He's never quite looked that level in this league, and I think he's been superb. Made up for him.
Tim, no real surprise to see Jerry eventually got off the score sheet, and we saw the game out really with no other worries particularly.
No, it was a bit of a party atmosphere the last 10 minutes, wasn't it? I think Watford had effectively already sort of started the motor for the bus home. All the fans started leaving on 80 minutes, and the game was effectively won, wasn't it? And it's just very, very pleasing. It's very, very pleasing. I missed the Bristol City game, unfortunately. I think so. They're like the first goals I've even seen scored in the North, and it was fantastic to win the game in the way that we did with two quality strikes like that. And it's a game I think you'll remember for quite a while for that reason, because there was in that last 15 minutes the atmosphere was absolutely fantastic, and that's what we needed. I think the problem is we've sort of to coin my phrase, there's been a bit of a general malaise around the football club, hasn't there, in recent weeks, where there perhaps hasn't been the belief I think, and then I'm also talking about in the stands. I don't think there's been the belief in the stands that we're going to score goals, that we're going to win games, and I think that's probably affected a couple of the away attendances. But I think today we've seen, and I think, to be fair, I think we saw it at Norwich, and I think we saw it at Sunderland. We've seen that there's a team there that can compete in the Championship and win points in the Championship. And we were unlucky at Sunderland not to come away with the points. We're unlucky against Norwich not to at least get a draw. And I'm really, really pleased. You know, to be fair, Matt Clapperton has taken a bit of stick. The owners have taken a bit of stick. And it's great. It was great today to see it all come together a bit more, really, and the fans and the team come together.
Yeah, absolutely. So, man of the match then, gentlemen. Mitch, I'll come to you first because Matt, sorry. I was going to give it to Big Gaz before Jerry popped up with those 2 goals. I think Big Gaz's all-round game today was superb, a sublime performance from the big man, and as you always say, more than just a goal machine.
Yeah, no, he was really good. He looked up for it. He you know, I went to Sunderland and he didn't get a lot at Sunderland, and when he's in that mood, he goes into his shell a bit, doesn't he? But he really, really was dominant today. But to be honest, I also thought Thornley was brilliant at the back. I thought Thornley played absolutely superb. But you can't not give it T8s, can you? You can't not give it T8s. Barely a debate, really, unless it is.
I think the call about Thornley is good. There was a little bit in the first half where he was like a terrier around one of their forwards. Can't remember which one it was now, and he just didn't give up. And I'm so pleased for him because I think he's been treated pretty poorly by some of the. Particularly Critchley. I think Critchley didn't rate him and didn't want him, and he couldn't have done more, I think, to suggest that he needed another club. And yet he's got his place in the team. I think Appleton understands his attributes and appreciates those. And I think we're a lot better team with him in there. Don't think there's any argument about man of the match. I think when somebody scores sublime goals of that type, 2 in quick succession, and generally was also very industrious. I thought, he was moved about a bit over the pitch, wasn't he, to accommodate different people. But wherever you put him, he puts in a shift, and I think he deserved to take the plaudits. And most certainly the North gave him the plaudits at the end, didn't they? And it was great.
He lapped it up, didn't he? Okay, guys, you just talk for 2 seconds, Tim, and introduce GTF, and I'll man the mixing board. Yeah.
Right, well, the main event tonight, really, which we're all interested in hearing about, is a few stories from Gary. Obviously, he needs no introduction. For most of us, the most successful period that we've ever watched Blackpool has been between 2007 and 2012, and Gary was there for a majority of that period. So let's invite him up to the stage and give him a warm welcome, and we'll hopefully get some interesting tidbits about his time at Blackpool and the incredible games that we saw him and the rest of his teammates play over the course of that period. Gary Taylor-Fletcher. Where do you want Gary? In the middle, centre stage.
It's that one, yeah. Right, Gaz, we've been here before, haven't we?
Yeah, I've had a few late nights, long nights, a few drinks while we were doing it.
They were supposed to be, I think it was an hour, wasn't it, that podcast? And it ended up, we had
3 episodes.
over 3 episodes, 2 hours each one. And
Brilliant.
they were absolutely superb, and I've so many people come up to me saying they really enjoyed it. Is everyone listening to the GTF pod, by the way? It's really amazing.
Wasn't it?
Yeah.
We didn't have that much to do.
It was, yeah. Right, Gary, let's get going then. I'm going to ask you a few, and then Tim's going to ask a few. If anyone's got any questions for Fletch at the end, we'll be taking them towards the end. Right, Gaz. Gary Taylor-Fletcher, scorer of the 500,000th Football League goal. Did you know that?
Yeah, it was Huddersfield Town. We won 3-0. I didn't know anything at first, and come off the pitch. Phone was back then. It was obviously text messages. 2006, I think it was. Come off the pitch. Peter Jackson, the manager's running, asking me did I know which ball I'd scored with, and didn't have a clue what he was on about. And only when I went upstairs to Viv and all my family in the lounge there, it was all over the news. I think Paul Scholes scored the one before, and then I got the £500,000 goal. But
Did you get £500,000 off the Football League for it?
no, we got a nice trophy, and me and Viv got took up to London for the day, and the VIP treatment for an England game and stuff. Yeah. Not like Sky Sports News that the next day, but the thing was that day. That week it was really wet, and I'd ordered my new boots and they never turned up. So got to the ground, all I had was my mould and slipping everywhere. So just before the game I decided to ask any of the lads if they had any spare studs, and one of the centre halves was, yeah, I've got these spare. They were about 2 sizes too big. I put about 3 pairs of socks on, and I don't know if you've seen the goal, but it's an absolute rocket from about 30 yards. I took it on my chest from about 30 yards, similar to the Coventry one, but probably about 10-15 yards further out, and absolutely spanked it into the top corner. He's still claiming that he scored the £500,000 goal because it was his boots, but yeah, good.
You definitely didn't get £500,000 off Carl for scoring that.
No.
Who surprised me? Okay, obviously Fletcher, you are a bit of a trendsetter in football as well, and I'm referring to the double-barrelled surname that I believe your good lady wife over there has something to do with. So before it was a thing, you were double-barrelling, weren't you?
Yeah, and I think that may be why Carl bought me, for the letters on the back of the shirt, so we could make some money and stuff. But no, yeah, I took Viv's name, she obviously took mine. We didn't want to be known as different surnames and things like that, so that was the reason. I didn't want my kids to be asking why their parents were different surnames. Viv's the last in the line, her dad's the last boy in her generation, so she wanted to keep her name, and it was one of them things back then that we decided to start.
It made you stand out on Gillette Soccer Saturday as well, because I always used to remember seeing Gary Taylor-Fletcher scoring for Huddersfield and Lincoln. It was a name that popped, so I think I said on the pod that it's a good marketing play as well. Isn't it?
Yeah, and obviously there's quite a few things that you can get with GTF as well. So.
Okay, so you reached some heights in your career. You certainly reached some heights, Gals, as a professional footballer. Do you think your prior job as a roofer helped you reach those heights?
I think we've had this.
That's a joke, by the way. That's a joke.
Where's that tumbleweed emoji?
Another slightly for it.
Hey, get him up here. So, just joking aside, do you think just doing a tough job in a sort of a labouring capacity made you more determined to take your opportunity as a footballer?
I think we covered this on the GTF podcast when we've done the 3 episodes, that was just the biggest load of BS ever.
Is it?
Yeah,
so you've never been a roofer?
I've told you this about 4 or 5 times. Never been a roofer. I was a barman.
You want to get into Wikipedia and edit it then?
Yeah, well, I've tried. Listen, on Wikipedia, I was married to Phil the Power Taylor.
Is that what you meant?
So I don't know who's put that.
Let's scrap that.
Yeah,
Cut this from the video. Cut.
Yeah, the thing was, I think on Wikipedia, I was a roofer and I was picked up playing in a charity game, but the real story was I went to college. That's when we met. I was at Liverpool, got released, went to college, got into the England schools, and I was playing pub football. I was playing down the social club with, I was 16 playing with 30-year-old fellas and 35-year-old fellas, getting the shit kicked out of me. and then got into England, the schools. So that's basically, it was everyone who wasn't signed to a club. So anyone who was at like Liverpool, Everton, Blackpool, they couldn't do it, but it was everyone else who was at colleges or universities or any jobs and that. And they were just saying, what are you doing playing at that level? You know, you've got to, you can't go, you're going to get injured, you can't play it. So one of the lads in college who I played with in college, he was at Northwich Youth. And I asked him, listen, have a word with your manager, see if I can go and play for, you know, your under-18s for a few games. Played 2 games, and then I was starting on the Tuesday for the first team in the conference. So that was my journey, and I wouldn't have changed it. I wouldn't have been the player that I was when I was 21, 22 without getting studs up the back of my legs from men when I was 16, 17, and that gave me a life into football. I was a barman as well as playing football, but
I was just going to say, one of the things that we see at Blackpool when players come out of academies and often come, probably Patino's looking a bit of an exception to that, but some of these guys who come from academies, they can't hack it. And I think playing some park football, rough park football, and playing in the conference will at a very young age will no doubt have been giving you a good apprenticeship, I'd have thought.
yeah, well, I remember when I went to Leyton Orient, it wasn't as a successful time for me, but main reason was 2 months after I signed, the manager who signed me got sacked, and he actually appointed the under-18s manager as the first team manager, and his first words to me was, you'll never play for this club because my under-18s are better than you. I don't know why we've paid 120, 150 grand for you. But then in training, he was asking me to show them how to hold a man off, how to roll defenders, and in the reserve team games, I was the one who was scoring all the goals, and he was asking me to show them how to do it, and I was like, isn't that your job? You know, I want to be doing that, but you know, you think that they're better than me, but for some reason you're trying to get me to coach them or show them how to do it, and that has just come from, as you say, playing against men, playing against adults.
It's very strange sometimes because managers have very different perceptions of players, don't we? We spoke about Jordan Thornley before, who didn't get a fair rub of the green, as far as I'm concerned, under Critchley, who otherwise was a fantastic manager, but he just didn't see where Jordan fitted in, where clearly, you know, on the current regime, he's seen as a key player, and you've obviously had that type of experience yourself with different clubs, it would appear.
Yeah, well, listen, it's football, isn't it? It is a game of opinions. That's what's so great about it. Everyone's got a different opinion. I'm sure there's probably some fans here who might not have rated me as a player, but that's everyone's opinion, and you know that's what it is. I'm sort of doing that now, making my opinions of players in Nantwich where I'm managing now, and you know, are they good enough or are they not? But that's what makes this game so exciting.
Okay, Fletch, so you played for Northwich, Victoria, Hull, Orient, Grays, Athletic, Dagenham, Redbridge, Lincoln and Huddersfield. But in 2007, you made the best decision of your life to join Blackpool Football Club, and the rest they say is history. So how did that move come about?
Yeah, well, I think Tim was saying the main years were from 2007 to 2012. I was there 2007 and left in 2013, so I was there for all of it, not the majority, but no, it was a good time. I was at Huddersfield and similar. Peter Jackson, who was my manager who signed me, played every game under him. Back then, I think I was a holding midfielder for him, and then a winger. Yeah, we played a diamond, and basically I just used to sit in front of the back four and build up the play. And you might not have noticed it. There was sometimes under Holloway, when we were on top but we needed a goal, he'd take one of the centre mids off, put a striker on and drop me back in, and I'd be the one who'd get it off the defenders and get us playing and that. But yeah, that was how we used to play it. He got sacked, I think it was the February time, and Andy Ritchie came in, went back up front. I think me and Luke Beckett finished joint top scorer at the end of the season with, I think, 15 goals each. Come at the end of the season, you'd always get dragged into the office, have a little chat with the manager, tells you how you've done, what's happening, if you're out of contract, if you're getting a new one and stuff. And his words to me was, yeah, I'm selling you. Selling you, top scorer, what you're on about? And you said that there's no one else in the squad. The board have told me I need to get funds if I want to sign players, and you're the only player that I feel we can get any money for. So, you know, we want to sell you, but I'd just signed a 3-year contract. I was happy there. Me and Viv were settled in Huddersfield, loving it. I was playing every week, and I think after the Leighton Orient saga of not playing that much, I was happy, and I was happy playing. So I told him, no, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying. And me and Viv were on holiday, and I got a phone call from one of my mate's stepdads, and he was like, "Oh, just sat here with someone he said he tried to sign you on loan towards the end of last season." I was like, "Well, who was that?" And he was like, "Oh, it's Simon Grayson, but they ended up Huddersfield wouldn't let you go, and they ended up getting Chris Brandon." And I was like, "Oh, right, yes, I've just been told I can leave." And he was like, "Well, he wants to sign you." So 2 days later, we were at our mate's wedding with his stepdad, and Simon Grayson's rang up. We had a little chat. He said, "Yeah, I'm interested. Just find out what Huddersfield want." 2 days later, I was on a golf day at Huddersfield Town Golf Day, and I got bloody paired with Andy Ritchie. So it was me and Andy Ritchie sat in a buggy while Simon Grayson's trying to ring me on the phone, and they didn't know that obviously I'd spoken. I remember we were going around, and Andy Ritchie was like, "You know, I still want to try and sell you, and I think we can get some money for you." After that, I was like, right, I need to play this to how I want to do it. So I was like, well, if I can get a team closer to home, me and Viv have been talking, we want to start a family, so we want to move a bit closer to home, and you know, if it's in a division above, then you know, I'd be interested. So text Simon Grayson, half an hour later the bid come in. Andy Ritchie pulled me to tell me that Blackpool had put a bid in, and wasn't quite as much as they wanted, but they think that they're going to go higher. I think Blackpool, ended up paying, it was 100 grand up front and 25 grand if we stayed up. It was all agreed, and then 2 days later I was a Blackpool player. I think me and Craney signed the same day. So 2 players who not bad done.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great bit of business from
I
Carl.
must say, I've never heard that part, because I was thinking, why would Huddersfield sell you? And listen, I've lived in Huddersfield myself, and they're quite, you know, they're quite well for that level. They're quite well supported and got a reasonably good setup. And I'm thinking, I mean, we all know, as we've no doubt go on to speak about Carl Oyston was never one for flashing the money about necessarily. But so I wonder what was actually the catalyst for it. It's quite interesting to hear how that came about, because it's quite bizarre that you'd sell somebody who's scoring in the way that you were. I mean, Luke Beckett was a fantastic player in his own right, and you've gone toe to toe with him and got the same number of goals the season before.
Yeah, and as I say, for half of that season I was the defensive midfielder. It was a midfielder. It was only the last 10 games I think I went up front and scored. It was about 8 goals in the last 10 games to level with him. But as you say, that's football. People don't understand the things behind what happens with decisions with players. We've had it. I was speaking to John on the way up here at Nantwich Town. We've got players, and at that level they're not on contracts. They're on something called a non-contract, which means if there's no game that week or they don't play, they don't get paid. But it also means that if another club wants one of our players, they can just put a thing into saying 7 days we can speak to your player and they can go for free and we can't do anything about it. So I think this week we've had probably 5 players approach, so it's just a transition all the time. But it's something that I'm cutting my teeth into. Trying to do it the hard way. Started off in a conference playing and trying to start off even lower in my managerial career, get back up.
Excellent. So the move itself then, Fletch. So did you sense Blackpool were on a club on the up at the time? And secondly, did the Oysters...
I'll be honest, you know what it was?
Go on.
The training ground plans.
Centre of excellence.
Yeah, the training ground plans that you know, they blew me away, and you know.
Did he actually show you them?
Yeah, I met Simon Grayson the tickle trout just off the MC.
He wouldn't have met you at the training ground, would he?
No, met him at the tickle trout, and he was like, "Yeah, Carl will be here in a minute. He's fishing somewhere along the thing." And I think he was about half an hour late, and I remember he's come in all his fishing gear.
What with like waders on and everything?
Well, yeah, basically. And after half an hour, I was on the way back home, telling Mercer, "Listen, it's not happening. I'm not coming." He said, he's offered me 50. He's spoke to Huddersfield, found out exactly what I was on, and offered me £50 more. So, you know, I'm not. We were like, oh, you know, it was the move that we thought was all planned, and within half an hour of meeting up with Carl, it was like no chance. And I remember as soon as we got in the car, after I got off the phone to Viv, Simon rang me up and he was just apologising. He was like, yeah, you know, he's turned up late, he's coming here, and he said, just leave it with me, let me speak to him, and I'll get back to you tomorrow. And then I think Simon spoke a little bit of sense into him, but also me and Viv had a good chat, and for me to come and play in the Championship, the league above, and as you say, for a team at Blackpool, the run he went on the year before, and getting promoted, it was the perfect move and what we needed at that time, and I needed at that time.
So you mentioned there, Fletcher, obviously Blackpool were back in the Championship, the second tier. You made your debut against Leicester away in our first game of the season. It was a massive deal for Blackpool to be back in the Championship. I think the majority of us looking around, it was the first time in our lifetime as we've been in the second tier. Was there
the first game at the Walker Stadium as well?
Was it?
I think so.
Oh, right.
Sure that was the first game at the.
Right, yeah, it might have been.
I think it was.
So it was a really big deal for us to be back in that division. Was there any appreciation of that or understanding of that in the squad at the time? That it was a huge deal for Blackpool to be at that level.
Yeah, I think the main thing in the squad was Wes Houlihan going to be able to play at that time, the little wee magician.
Had you all experienced what he could do before that game?
Yeah, well, obviously the lads had, because obviously he'd been the year before, hadn't he, and whether it was coming through, and he'd done basically the whole of pre-season with us. He was with us all of pre-season, but he just couldn't play in any of the games or anything. But you know, I knew. I've said it before. He's probably the best player I've ever played with. Me and him got on really well, done really well together, and linked up really well in training, in matches, and he got a lot of assists for me. I got a lot of assists for him. So, you know, it was one of them. But as you say, the occasion for Blackpool to be going, and I remember all the talk before the game was, you know, it was Leicester's first game back at the Walkers, and newly promoted Blackpool are coming, and you know how they're going to have such a good day, and you know start the stadium with a bang. And typical Blackpool, we were there, and we sort of rubbed it in the face a little bit, and you know it was one of them games where we did probably start with our backs to the wall. You look at some of the players they had with Beckford, and I think it was Beckford up front and stuff, players like that who, you know, probably his wage was the whole of our starting 11, but we gave a good account of ourselves, and we did have a few chances, and I think it was Keith left foot, yeah, so I think I remember I went on a little run, had a shot blocked, and then it fell to him, and he's put it in the back of the net. But yeah, no, it was a great day, and as you say, to make me debut like that was really good.
I've got a confession. I missed your debut. I did a Smith. I did a Smith the whole 90 minutes because, well, we weren't expected to go up, were we? Because we'd done the perfect 10 to even get to the playoff out. So I booked my summer holiday with the kids for that particular 2 weeks. I was stuffed. I couldn't get out of it. So I was like,
Fletch doing a Smith is Nick's called Nick Smith, and
He's
famed for missing goals, like going to get a drink.
It's got a good story about my very last goal.
She managed to miss it, didn't she?
Yeah, do you want me to tell it? She was too busy doing a cartwheel with all the mates in the box.
Which goal was this?
The last goal for Blackpool, I think it was the last game or something. Obviously,
What at Old Trafford? Oh, no,
that was the Premier League. Yeah, no, the last goal for Blackpool it was. She came. You did confess to me, didn't you, that you were busy showing people that you could still do handstands.
Were you cartwheeling because you knew you'd never have to deal with a Carl Oyston again, dude? Good answer.
Oh, can you imagine after spending all those years that we did, what was it, 29, wasn't it? 29 years in the lower leagues. I'd have never seen us in the Championship, in the first Championship game, and I'm 2,500 miles away. But it was...
Did you do the same for Wigan, though?
Yes. Yes.
That's not Wigan either.
Because it was already booked. Yeah, I miss Wigan as well.
Okay.
That was
Absolutely.
one of the best days ever.
We'll come to that.
Yeah, that's on the
So
script.
that's my
First
second
goal of the Premier League season for Blackpool. Fletch, speaking of goals, you scored your first goal for Blackpool in an away defeat 2-1 at Wolves. I was there, Tim probably wasn't. He was probably looking at some ruins in Paphos or something. We somehow lost that game, if you can remember. We pissed all over them.
Freddie Eastwood. Scored two.
Freddie Eastwood scored two. Right,
come
okay.
on. Yeah.
So the result aside, how did it feel scoring your debut goal? It was a nice move as well from them.
Yeah, it was. I remember, I think it was about the fourth game in, and I'd started the first two games, done well. And then for some reason, Simon dropped me for the next game, and we played Adrian Forbes.
Look at the reaction. 80 Forbes.
Yeah, played
80 Forbes or GTF.
Played 80 Forbes, and I remember after the game I went in and asked him sort of why, and he was like, oh, well, you know, you're just getting used to how we're playing and stuff and that, and you've not really, you've done well, but, you know, I need goals, and I thought he was going to score a goal, so I was like, right, okay, I'll, you know, if that's what you want, I'll play a bit more attacking, because he was, obviously, Simon was quite a defensive, sort of wanted me just to stay wide, win a header, and try and play off Ben Burgess, but I remember that game just beforehand, David Fox, I knew he could play a ball, and I can't remember, it was...
You were on the right-hand
Yeah,
side.
I was on the
You're
right
on the
side.
right
I remember...
You like the lace.
I remember the left back, and I kept saying to Foxy, you know, he's quite slow, so just every time now I'm just going to run in behind. Obviously I was lightning, I'd got in a few times and pulled it back across, but this time I made the sort of run inside, and he's found with an inch perfect pass, took a touch just across him, and finished it with a volley, and yeah, it was a great feeling to score my first goal, especially obviously being a championship player. But yeah, no, it was the start of, I think it was 39 in total or something like that, altogether 38 maybe.
I don't trust Wikipedia anymore, Fletch, so I'll take your word for that. Mick McCarthy, he was refreshingly honest. I thought, did anyone go to that game, that Wolves away game? God, you're not very loyal, you are you? Jesus. To it? Did you go? Yeah, okay. Raise your hand then. We're all friends here. That's it.
I'm thinking he could have been with Alistair Campbell, aren't he?
Who wants to leave now? He's through there.
Or Clubland. That's what that was. Clubland.
Mick said, I feel like Dick Turpin after that, getting away with highway robbery. I cannot think of one thing we did better than Blackpool apart from putting the ball in the net. Passing, tackling, defending. They were better than us all over the park. But unbelievably, we came across and won the game. I've always liked Mick McCarthy. I love that little honesty there.
Yeah, it was just to say that. I do remember that game. It was probably the start of how we wanted to play, and we absolutely battered them. We played some great football, but in that, I think every one of us was at it as well. We knew that they were sort of one of the favourite teams and the biggest teams, and as you say, you turn up at Molineux, especially at that time when I think Blackpool only had 2 stands, didn't they, and then the Gene Kelly stand. But you go to Molineux, and just it is little things like that you raise the game, and we all did that day, and you know, we were gutted. Obviously, I was made up that I scored my first goal, but the main thing was we didn't get any points. So,
okay, let's move on to the now famous, infamous 2009-10 season. Simon Grayson's obviously left the club, being replaced by Ian Holloway. What an impression he left on the club. What was your first impressions of him when you met him, and what was the squad's first impressions of him?
It was a bit of a weird one because obviously there was one or two players who'd been under him before, and he'd sort of, well, he failed.
Ever was it?
Yeah, he'd failed at Leicester. Well, not that he failed, but he was sort of put in a bad light because of the way the board were there and then, and signing players without his knowledge and stuff, and selling players without his knowledge. So, but obviously the talk from the players was there was one other person who was favourite for it. Who can you remember who? But it was anyone.
Anyone remember?
There was someone, but I can't remember who it was. But all the lads was like, right, anyone but him. And
It's probably Owen Coyle.
I think it was someone like Owen Coyle, or it was someone, but it was anyone but him. And then obviously we were told that Holloway was in for the job, and Neville was like, yeah, he's really good, but he's crazy. And you know, what do you mean? He said he's just got no common sense of what he wants. He said he was at that time, I think he was a bit in between of how he wanted to play and stuff, but his first day when he come into training and we had a meeting, and I think that was then we knew we were going to have a lot of meetings and they were going to be a long time because he did like to talk. But he's come in and he's got the little whiteboard out and he's like, right, what we're going to do is we're going to do this, and there was lines and you pass it in, you get it there, and then we hit this switch and you support there. And he was like, but don't worry, I've had my chickens doing it for the last 12 months, so you'll be all right. And he put a thing on the board and there was all the different positions on a pitch, and he's like, right, if you can play that position perfectly, write it in blue. If you can fill in somewhere else, write it in red. If you want to try somewhere else, write it in yellow. So obviously I'd played virtually every position bar anywhere in defence. So I just basically just filled in the majority of it blue with some bits in red. But when I was writing, he was looking at me and he was like, Fletch, why are you writing all them positions down? I said, well, I've played all them positions. He went, well, all as I've seen from these to you is all you do is the goalkeeper gets it, kicks it in between you and Ben, you win the header and you chase it. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to show you, obviously, I'm better than that. He was like, no, I know you're better than that. He said, but why did they just get you to do that? He said, you know, you can win a header, but, you know, when I've seen with the ball with your feet and stuff, you know, you're really good. I said, well, that's why I'm putting all these positions down, because I want to play. I want to, you know, I'm not bothered where to play, I just want to play. And he's like, right, that'll do for me. And we done the training, and it was just, he was a genius with how he drilled how we wanted to play in, because for the first 3 weeks, all we did was unopposed attack and shape. And basically it was how we played. We'd get it, we'd work it a little bit, and then Charles Keefe-Varney had hit a big diagonal to me or Brett or whoever was on the wing, but as they were building up, everyone else would be edging over that way, so when we hit it, didn't matter if their defender won, they'd have Craney pulling it, backing it up, one of the midfielders had pulled, and then the striker had pulled over, so no matter what, who won it, there was 3 of our players round expecting it, and it worked a treat. As you say, we killed teams with how we played, hitting the switch, hitting the diag, and then playing, and it was just a genius way of playing. He'd worked it, he'd come in, he'd watch Swansea. You know, Swansea were a great passing team, but a lot of the times didn't have that end product. They didn't know how to play a different way, so he incorporated that long switch, and it was one of them where after you'd probably done it for 2-3 weeks, I remember one, it was like, right, Fletch, you're going left back, Evil, you're going up front. And he'd done it where we had to play out of position, so no matter what, if we found ourselves somewhere on the pitch, say from a corner, and like you'd set up and you'd be chasing, and I'd find myself in the left back position, I'd know exactly what he'd want from me there. And it just becomes so natural that the team could play. I'd play 3, 4, 5 positions. Oh, there's Mum. 3, 4, 5 positions in a game, and it was just because I knew exactly what we wanted at each point, and it was the same with everyone else. It was like the Notts Forest game, second leg. They were all over us, and just one change of playing Charlie Adam up front for 10 minutes and dropping DJ back into midfield just messed the defence up. They didn't know what was happening, and all of a sudden we'd scored 2-3 goals, and we went back to how we were with Charlie back in midfield, and we just didn't have a clue. But in the first half, Charlie couldn't get on the ball, DJ couldn't get on the ball, so he just had the idea, well, 10-15 minutes, swap positions, see how they deal with that, and then once they've changed their stuff, mess them up, we'll go back to how we do it again.
It's very unusual for any manager to do something quite as drastic as that, isn't it? Just swap it. Yeah. And it's almost the craziness that creates unpredictability. And if you've got your belief in the way you play, it's almost before my time even. But Holland used to do that, didn't they? Where they used to just like play total football, where they could just move into different positions and cover for each other. And I was at that game, and I didn't actually. Perhaps it's showing my football naivety. I didn't actually realise that that's what had happened, because of course you're caught up in all the emotion and all the noise, but all I could see was fluidity all over the pitch. I mean, it's probably, without a doubt, for a lot of the people there, the best ever game they've ever seen in a Blackpool team ever play.
Yeah, it was a weird one, because obviously we won the game and absolutely battered them, but first half they just basically did go man for man on me, DJ, I think it was Charlie, Dobbs and Brett. It was weird, because no matter what, we'd switched the same player, they wouldn't pass on. They had players playing out of position, but we just couldn't get any fluidity on how we played. So as you say, it was just one of them, right, you swap with him and see what they do then. And they did. They had centre halves trying to play centre mid, and they had the centre mids playing centre back, and we knew how to play that way. Charlie knew what was expected up front, DJ knew what was expected in midfield, but when we switched the opposition around and they had centre backs playing centre mid, they didn't know how to play, and that was how we got on top.
There was an incredible atmosphere of that game as well. I mean, I was as close as you and I are to my brother, probably closer in fact, and we couldn't even hear each other speak. It was. I don't think I've ever had that at a game before, because the Forest fans were all around us, above us, to the side of us, and they were so convinced we were going to win that game. And I think we sort of played into that a little bit, because you've got the little Scott, the manager Billy, and he was giving it plenty, wasn't he? Saying that at the end of the first game we've won this, lads, and and it's going to be easy from here.
Yeah, he was giving it in the league game. I think it was about 5 games before the last game of the season. He made 11 changes because he claimed he wanted to lose the game, so they finished 4th, we finished 5th, and they play us, or they finished 3rd, we finished 6th, wherever it was, and they play us in the semi-final. So then he had an easy route into the final. So our team talk was done just by him. Ian didn't need to say anything.
Did he actually say that to you in the change room?
Yeah, he put it in all the papers. Billy Davis, he put it in the papers after that league game. We were walking off, and he's there rubbing his hands that he's happy, job done. They'll beat us in the playoffs, and then first leg we beat them 2-1. He's there again, and you could see the players. I remember speaking to Wes Morgan afterwards, and he was like, they were all thinking, "What are you doing? You're just."
We beat him 4 times that year, didn't we?
Yeah.
So quite where this bravado comes from. It reminds me a little bit, and for those those of a certain vintage, shall we say, in the audience, for the 1996 when we were in the semi-finals, we were probably the most distraught I've ever been as a Blackpool fan. But we were printing the plans for Wembley in the second leg programme, and I'm thinking, and then goal Chris Kamara did was like nail that to the to the team.
Team talk done. That's
Team
all
talk
you
done, he said, and it is, isn't it? So when you got Billy Davies saying stuff like that, it's like Holloway's job's done for him, isn't it?
I think he even come out and said we booked our hotel, we know where we're staying, what we've got all our plans for when we're training, we're ready for Wembley. And as you say, all plans change, don't we?
I'm glad we've discussed this topic. It's actually it's a bullet point here. I've just put get Flex to tell the audience about your interactions with Billy Davis? Because I sort of remember did you actually say anything to him? Did you actually?
I think we all did, yeah.
Did you?
Yeah. Wouldn't like to repeat it again, but it
Go
was,
on, Fletch. Go on. That was really funny.
along the lines of we short ass Jack or something along the lines. But the thing was, Craney and Jazz were saying exactly the same, and they're Scottish as well. They were taking on the counter.
His face, because you've got that the clip with elbow music playing in the background, which I think is fantastic. It's sort of quite iconic, and his face at the end of the game is just an absolute picture, isn't it? And it's.
Well, as you say, he was that confident that.
Yeah, but they all were. We walk across Trent Bridge, and to be honest, the best thing you can do for me is be self-depreciating in that situation and just let them get overly confident. And that's what most Blackpool fans do. We say, well, we're just here for the ride, mate. We weren't there for the ride, but that's what we say to them, because why disabuse them of that notion? You might as well just let them have that false confidence and then do it on the field.
Yeah, it was the same with Cardiff in the final. We had a sort of assertive confidence, but they have an arrogant confidence. It's the way you set yourself up, really. He set himself up for a downfall, whereas, as you say, we just kept quiet. We knew what job we had to do, and we went about our business.
Okay, which nicely segues onto the playoff final there. So, Fletch, what was the mood in the squad in the build up to the final itself? Were you confident, and what was Ian Holloway like in the build up to get you up for the game? Not that you needed getting up for it, but how did he try to give you a team talk to motivate, etc.?
Yeah, well, we'd had it all along, obviously, that all through the season we were messing about and spending our bonus money and things like that. But the one thing with the semi-finals and the playoff final was, all the way through, we were like, right, if we get Forest, we'll beat them. If we get Cardiff in the final, we'll beat them. But we had Leicester were our bogey team that year, and obviously I think they beat us 3-0. I think in every game, maybe even 4-0 in one of them. And it was just the confidence that as long as Leicester weren't in the final, we were going up no matter what. And the build up to it, the preparation that we had was fantastic. The hotels we stayed in, we couldn't have asked for any more. As I say, Holloway.
Surprised you weren't staying in a Premier Inn, actually.
Yeah, no.
Given Carl did the bookings.
Yeah, well, I'd say it was. We made sure that everything was done right. I think from I don't have previous experiences or previous years from the players. From obviously when you went up from League One, they weren't happy with the preparations for their game, and like Bev O'Keefe, they made sure that this time they knew exactly what they wanted, and we got the best to give us the best chance of going up and going performing. I think you could see from the day, we can see the goal, but we came back. We can see the second we came back. Once we scored that third goal, we knew they'd gone, and their confidence had gone, and they weren't coming back. That was the big thing about that squad, and that year was no matter what, we didn't know when we were beaten, and we'd always go right to the very end. And in that game, as you say, went down twice, went behind twice, but every time we knew we were going to go and score and go on and win the game.
There's a segment in the first half where I think the football your team played, our team played, is some of the best football I've ever watched, ever. And I think it's a great testament to that team. I think it's about a 15-minute segment, but I don't think Cardiff touched the ball.
Yeah, well, it was from when they scored, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Until Chaz scored, and then they've scored again, and even after the second goal, I think for 10 minutes they didn't touch the ball. Most of that first half was just all us, but they had two chances, and they obviously had quality players to put it in the back of the net.
What's it like playing that heat, by the way? Because it was just sitting there was tortuous, to be honest. In the sun, it was so hot. It must have been incredible for you guys.
Yeah, there spoke on last time when you first walk out and the big flames go up. It's hot enough anyway, but then the big flames go up. Yeah, that's why I'm like this. I got a bit too close, but now it was it was horrible. You know, you couldn't breathe, you couldn't get your breath, but we managed ourselves. And
Do you think you're fitter than Cardiff? Or do you think it was just about poor retention, really?
I think that was it. I think we'll see. I think we killed them with how we played, and how we kept the ball by working the switches, by making them run, and the amount of probably running they had to do without the ball, whereas a lot of ours was with the ball.
So, Fletcher, that game will obviously go down in folklore as an absolute classic game of football. We've won the game. Tell us a bit about the celebrations afterwards, particularly at the hotel, from what I recall you told me.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. As I said, everything was spot on. We went down a big hotel in the centre of London. Obviously, the drinks were flowing. I managed to get most of my family's drinks on the owner's tab, using.
Was it not a free bar anyway?
When we first went in, until we got into the party, no, it wasn't. But every time I seen Owen go up to the bar, I'd run up and order my drinks and pass him my bill, and he'd sign it in his room, put in his room on, and off we go. And yeah, I think it was a free bar for all my lot. I think we had the trophy for about an hour as well, didn't we? Because there was that many of us. I think, how many did we have going? Was it 64 in all, something like that? So 64 of my friends and family all went down. We had probably a corner, and as you say, all with the trophy and all that. And it was really good. And then obviously I was on crutches, so the limbo under my crutches and things like that. I was stood there holding it, and it was a great night, really good night. And you know, the only thing, the worst thing was we had to get up early next morning to come back down to Blackpool to get ready for the tour and for the hotel bus. But yeah, another great day.
Okay, guys, we'll just take a quick 5-10 minute break. Go and get yourself a drink if anyone needs to go to the toilet, and we'll resume the chat with the Premier League. So, 5 minutes, should we say? 5-10 minutes, get yourselves a drink, we'll come back. Okay, cheers.
Leicester and Wigan.
That's probably what we're going to end up like. A couple of bad trips, that's going to be. Everyone's low.
Okay, is everyone suitably well oiled after that minor break? I think I've overdone the questions here, Fletch. We'll have to edit some of these out. Okay, the build-up to the Premier League season was less than optimal, to put it mildly. With the severely delayed promotion bonuses, and incredibly Charlie Adam not being given his not getting relegated bonus from you know who. How did that affect morale in the squad, and did you think it helped in the build up to the Premier League season?
Massively, yeah. Obviously, Charlie wasn't the only one. There was about 4 or 5 others of us who never got that non-relegation bonus because, as I say, in Carl's words, we didn't not get relegated. We actually went up, so that clause doesn't count or something. So Charlie was obviously the one who took him to court, but probably didn't end up coming out with much money, he said, but he just wanted the fact that, well, I think he actually lost money, but he just wanted the fact that to show that, you know,
principle of it.
Yeah, the principle of it is right. But I think one of the worst things was obviously us with our bonus. He was hiding the fact that the club didn't have the money, and if he would have just told us as soon as the Premier League money came in on the 15th of August that, it's funny how I actually know the date, the 15th of August, that we will get paid then. But he was going round in circles telling us that, oh yeah, I'm going to put it into some pensions for you.
I was just about to say that. I bet you really wish you'd invested your money in Promenade Construction Limited or anything like that.
Yeah, he was talking about putting it in pensions, that when we're 55 you can get your money and you'll get all of your bonus instead of paying any tax on it. And, you know, for the majority of us, we never ever had any money like this, and you know, we wanted it then and now to be able to do things and, you know, buy houses and things like that. But he was going around saying that we wouldn't get it till we were 55 and things like that. So, you know,
it's a life-changing amount of money, really, isn't it? You know, from the point of view of actually having that lump of cash that you can actually put in a house or do whatever you want with it, and I got, you know, I always found it quite disrespectful that they weren't prepared to recognise it against the backdrop of what you'd all done, this incredible thing that you'd done, that you shouldn't take a share of it, the promised share of it. Never mind, it wasn't like it was after the event, was it? It was promised you at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, and as you say, if we would have just been honest and said, listen, this is the day you'll get paid, everyone would have been happy. In the end, it took for us to say, I think it was the week before the last game of the season, the first game of the season, that, you know, we were going to not play, we were going to go on strike, because obviously we went to the PFA, they were willing to help us. I was one of the main. I had to go up and down to speak to Carl and try and sort it out, and every time I was telling the lads what was going on, they were flabbergasted. But as I say, if he would have just said, this is the day you'll get it, you get paid on this day, everything, you know, the lads would have just got on with it and would have been fine. But it was just the back and forth of, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But we got there. I think one of the worst things was he didn't want to sign any players until the money come in, and as you say, it was a week after the first game of the season. I think it was only on the Thursday before the Wigan game that I think we went and signed 12 players. They all came in on the same day, and, you know, us doing pre-season, we didn't know what squad we were going to have. I think we had 14 signed on, but for the whole of pre-season we had trialists in. One of the main one was when we were down in Bath and Devon on Holloway's amazing tour for that pre-season. You know, starting the Premier League, he didn't want to go to Portugal or Spain or somewhere. He wanted to go close to home. So I think he had something on with a family wedding or something. But we went down to Bath and we were training, and you're looking at this lad who looked as if he had never kicked a ball in his life, and he had rugby studs on which were about 2 inches long on the hardest pitch in pre-season. And I remember Brett looking at him, and Brett said, "Do I know you from somewhere?" You know, he was like, "Yeah, I served you your tea last night." And he was one of the waiters from the hotel we were staying at, because we didn't have enough players. Holloway invited them down to make up numbers and stuff, and, you know, you're trying to prepare for the Premier League year. You know, these are the things that you're up against. And yeah, it was very interesting, that pre-season, the turnaround and the amount of trialists that were in just to make up numbers. And
in some ways, you think it worked. I can imagine it's the type of thing that for 1 or 2 seasons can work quite well. It's almost like us and them, and Holloway can use that to try and knit the squad together and make you what you were, the better sum of individual parts. But I suppose there's only so long that can actually go on for. But
yeah, well, you look in if the mainstay of obviously the year we went up, the Premier League year, and then the year after when we should have gone up again, should have gone back up, it was the core of players that was always there. Obviously, you had Baps, Evo, Cranes, obviously Vaughan, Keith, myself, Brett, DJ, and there was a core right throughout the whole squad that stayed, and the togetherness we had as a squad and team was unbelievable. We all knew, we all dug in together, and as you say, things like that with happens, but with not being able to get showered at the training ground, or not getting obviously bonuses paid on time, players not signing. It does bring you together, because you do have to get that little bit of a mentality that we're contracted, we're at this club, and no matter what, we're not going to let these things affect us, because we want to do our best and show ourselves of how good we are and go and have a successful year in the Premier League. So that Thursday when them 12 players did come in, we showed them exactly what we wanted. I remember we were doing attack and shape, and I was having to try and explain in my best Scouse French to Elliot Grandin what was expected from a winger, what was expected from a number 10 during training, and it was these things that you laugh now, but this is what we had to do, and as a group of players, that was what we were willing to do for the club and for each other.
So, Fletcher, we've already mentioned the Wigan game. Marlon Harewood being one of those new signings, he had a great game there, didn't he, scoring a brace, but you scored Blackpool's first ever goal in the Premier League at Wigan.
It should have been the first two.
What's that?
It should have been the first two. The offside that was 4 or 5 yards onside.
Brett missed the sitter as well, didn't he? Yeah, we were all over him in that first sort of 15-20 minute period, but you've scored the goal where you've just passed it back where it's come in from. It was a controlled finish into the far corner. Did you mean to play it like that, stabbing it into the floor?
It was just how the ball bounced, and I just hit it just to guide it back that way, and as you say, it's gone in and bounced back up over the keeper. So
how did you feel when that goal was?
It was unbelievable. I think a lot of the lads were obviously gobsmacked that we'd scored, but as you say, we deserved to. We were on top, we were by far the better team. And then I remember obviously scoring, turning, having a little run, then turning round and thinking, where is everyone? And there was only Cranes who came up to me and jumped on me back, and everyone else was back on the halfway line ready to go again. And I was thinking, hold on a minute, we've just scored our first goal in the Premier League. Let's enjoy it for 5 minutes. But as you say, we went on. I had another one obviously chalked off, which was miles onside. Obviously Marlon scoring, Baps even getting on the score sheet. What a day. Unbelievable. The travelling fans were amazing. I think we filled the whole stand behind the game, and Viv was there obviously with, I think George was only 3 then, but he went to one of his first away games there. I think that we've never seen it ourselves, but loads of people told us that they were on a shot on one of the highlights match of the day or something, but we never ever managed to find it. So
I wasn't on the job.
Nick was. You were on it, weren't you? Saw you on Match Today. Yeah.
I have a little bit of quick story. Anybody who's ever watched the Likely lads will remember the game. Those of certain vintage when they were trying not to know the score of the England match that was ultimately fogged off as it happened. So I was in Cyprus, and I was meant to watch the game live, and this bar said, yeah, it's on, and then it wasn't on. So I thought, I can't know the score until I can watch the game. So I spent the whole afternoon avoiding the score, and I got to about 10 o'clock at night and still didn't know the score. So it was 8 o'clock in English Town. I waited to come on Sky to come watch it, and somebody really told me the score just before the start of the game. But I was ecstatic we won 4-0. but I'd spent 5 hours trying to avoid knowing the score without me fingers in my ears. And
Bit bittersweet. So, the Newcastle away, that was another great away performance. DJ coming in to make it finally being signed after, 4 or 5 games in, 2-0 there. But a game that'll live long in your memory, and I'm sure everyone in this room will be at Anfield. When we went there, we beat them 2-1. You being a scout, obviously, and I believe a Liverpool fan. What did that mean to you?
Yeah, it was, personally, it was unbelievable. They released me when I was 15, telling me that, wasn't quite good enough for their standard or whatever. And I think there was only 2 players from that year who actually went on and played in the Premier League. Everyone else just got released and went and played non-league. But massive Liverpool fan, going to Anfield, seeing them and hearing them singing "Never Walk Alone," knowing that you're going to be playing against them in the next few minutes was unbelievable. But the performance that day, we were exceptional right from the very off. We were on top, we had them rattled. I remember Jamie Carragher was playing left back against me. That mum again.
schoolboy errors this job.
She knows I'm doing this. She keeps ringing me.
So, we went 2-0 up and fully deserved it. Even the start of the second half, you're thinking they're going to come out and have a go. It wasn't only until probably the last 10-15 minutes that they sort of got on top. And I remember after the game, we were obviously celebrating with the Blackpool fans, but we turned around and to see Anfield still full, ready to clap us off, knowing that we just put that kind of performance on. For me, it was a great feeling and something that I'll never ever forget. As I say, family and all them Liverpool fans were sat actually in the away end cheering that Liverpool had just got beat. So, it was a great day for everyone.
Unbelievable times. So, cast your mind back to the Man City game at home, 3-2. You scored. Did you? Yeah. We were lucky not to come away with anything at that game. And after that, there was that infamous game away at Aston Villa when Holloway decided to change the entire 11 because he thought the West Ham game after that was more winnable, given that, which was bizarre considering Aston Villa were kind of under strength at the time. How did that go down in the dressing room when everyone found out?
It was a bit of a, for me, I was fuming because Villa Park was one of the only, in the whole of the 92 league clubs, that was one of the grounds that I'd never ever played at, and I still, obviously to this day, haven't. I think there's only 4 in the whole football league that I've not played at, so for me, I was, it was one of them that I wanted to tick off.
It is like a magnificent old stadium as well.
Yeah, but he sort of had a point that the team that he put out is actually more experienced and had more Premier League games than the team that had played the week before. I remember there was me, Keith and Cranes were sat in the stands. Everyone else was either obviously on the bench or, starting. And it was just one of them. We were like, well, he's just got us promoted. What are we to say? But as you say, we should have won that game. That was the thing, we were a better team in that game. And you do just wonder, these little things, if you would have gone full strength in that game, would have got an extra point. We've said it on our previous podcasts where just them little things make fine details. If we would have had a better training pitch or, a kit man who actually washed the kit, we might have just had that little bit of extra to get us an extra point or these little things to stay up. So it's one of them where you can ask for these things or people can have their opinions, and he wanted to change that game and obviously he got fined for it, but he took it on the chin and that was...
He was going to resign actually, wasn't he?
Was it Carl who threatened to resign or?
No, well, Carl threatened to resign when he was made bankrupt, and anyway, that's another story.
So we had a brilliant November and December, wins against Wolves at Bloomfield Road, away wins at Stoke and Sunderland, which saw Blackpool rack up 28 points at the time. I was at Sunderland away, coming out with my sister, rubbing our hands together saying we are never going down. Were you surprised at that stage of the season to have 28 points, and were you and the squad reasonably confident of staying up?
Yeah, as you say, that amount of points after that many games, there's some years where that was enough to stay up probably anyway, but that's one of the biggest things of what we said before was Gillo getting injured. That was probably the main criticism from that year and that transfer window, that in the January we didn't just go out and get a keeper until Gillo was back fit. The player that we had ready to come in, and Shea Given, and that was, that would have just been the last little piece in the jigsaw to help the defence shore up a little bit and get us them extra points. But again,
well, is that true then?
It was all nailed on, but obviously money talks. He thought we were guaranteed safety, and Ollie's even said that was probably one of the main things that he regrets, of not bringing in the keeper and pushing for the deal to get done.
Although these things happen for a reason, because I think it would have stayed up, we might have been stuck with the Oystons forever because they'd have got another 90 million. So these things happen for a reason, don't they?
Yeah, as you say, it's tough to comment on things like that, because we might have stayed up and then Blackpool might have stayed up again, and obviously they would have been getting more money, but the fans would have been happy with the Premier League club. So you never know what can happen.
Yeah. So the January transfer window saga with Charlie Adam more than likely contributed to our shocking run in January and February, losing 8, drawing 1, winning just 2 matches during this period. Do you think this, frankly, laughable activity in the transfer window affected us in that period?
Yeah, it was. I don't know.
It was a Kornilenko, Reed, and James Beattie.
Yeah.
I remember you telling me James Beattie rocking up in his Ferrari at Squires Gate.
Lamborghini at Squires Gate. We were obviously thinking what this noise was, and he's pulling in a Lamborghini with his registration was Beats, 80 ATS, and the rumours were he was on 40 grand a week at Rangers and we were paying 20 of it, and not one of our players at that time was anywhere near 20, let alone 10 or even thingy, and the paying him, and it was laughable because you're thinking and you're looking at him, how are you on that money? And he was probably technically one of the worst players I've ever come across, but if you put him in the box with a goal, he'd score a goal, but at that time and that stage of his career, he was very rarely in the box. So it's one of them, these players come in, and he didn't improve the squad for me. And
it probably ruined the morale of the existing squad as well.
Yeah, that was probably a big thing. Obviously, with Charlie wanting to go, but then not happening. He was promised he'd go the end of the season, and then them coming in, it did probably, as you say, have a little bit of a negative effect on everyone else.
You scored in a game at home to Arsenal in a scabby win. You only seem to score against the big team, so I've just missed a bit here. A brief ray of sunshine in this dark period of the hand here was completing the double over Liverpool at Bloomfield Road. And you scored after 12 minutes, surely one of the highlights of your career.
Yeah, again, as you say, scoring, obviously with what had happened that week with one of the old teammates passing away, who was a massive Everton fan. Great game, all the family there. It was a bit of a weird one because we were meant to play them on Boxing Day, wasn't we? But
no under-soil heating.
Yeah, the under-soil heating. I don't know, it was the surrounding areas apparently that Carl managed to get iced over. So yeah, I think it was a few weeks later, but again I had all my family upstairs in one of the lounges and stuff, and that, all having a meal and stuff. And
I just remember the incredible atmosphere that night.
Yeah,
it was unbelievable. It was probably one of the best ones I ever remember at Bloomfield Road, to be honest.
Yeah, it sounds like that clubland up there. And I think one of the things as well, and obviously Liverpool coming into town, Kenny Dalglish was back in charge. They had a big buzz about them, but that game, although we went 1-0 down early on, we played really well. We were unbelievable. And we probably should have won by a few more.
3-1 against Spurs was another memorable game under the lights again. I think that got rearranged, didn't it? Then we went on a terrible run, losing 5 and drawing 4 of our next game. The late goals were conceded at Blackburn, Bolton.
In both,
Yeah.
like that, yeah.
But for me, it was like the Blackburn one when. In fact, let's not talk about that. It's too depressing. And that compounded, and then with the Spurs game, when Charlie scored that pen, retook it, missed, took the second one, scored, and then Jermaine Defoe popped up with a pointless equaliser for them. I think the writing was on the wall, and the mood amongst the fan base was we're in trouble here. And so, what was the mood in the camp after that Spurs game?
I think the worst thing was we knew we were playing Man United away the last game of the season.
Stay up.
To stay up.
Win to stay up.
Yeah, win to stay up. And, all through the season, you're like, we need to be sorted before that game. And it was a weird time, because obviously you're made up to be playing in the Premier League, and for the journey we come on, man.
Turn your phone off.
So it was just weird. It was a weird vibe, because obviously the journey we've been on, and we still got 39 points. We got 10 wins throughout the season. So not as if we were getting beat every game and we only got 10, 12 points. We got 39 points. So for us, as everyone says, 40 points is the safety. In the Premier League now, 32 points, 34 points is safe.
I remember Wigan. Who was the guy up front for Wigan? Just went on an absolute mental run of scoring goals, and Wigan were like dead and buried, and they just came back from nowhere. He's been said, doesn't it? I can't remember his name now, but I could keep sick. That's it. He kept scoring every single game, and they kept winning. And I'm thinking, we're going to stay up here. But they kept going. They closed that gap massively in the last few games, and it was so fortunate on that. I don't think anybody's ever been relegated on those number of points ever since. I don't think.
There's obviously that game at Bolton. I mean, what a game! That was one of the best games I've ever witnessed. When you set up that winner for Charlie, didn't you, to make it 4-3?
Yeah.
What was that like to play in? Atmosphere incredible again.
Yeah, atmosphere incredible. I think I set 3 of the goals up that day. And the first one, I've won the flick on, and Punch scored, or DJ. Punch scored, and then obviously setting up Charlie, and then. But it was just as you say, it was a back and forth game. After that, we thought, right, this is it, and we've got a chance, and we're going to stay up again.
I've penned this game at Man United. It was a proper a Roy of the Rovers story almost, wasn't it? Little Blackpool, last game of the season, have to go and beat European champions, not lost the game at home all season. What a task it was, but we were so close, weren't we? Charlie putting us 2-1 up, and that goal. Sorry, equaliser. But that goal that you scored, the finish was sublime, but it was just the build-up, wasn't it? And that goal was you all over, just a little flick with the instep. Get me past the world class.
There was no VAR back then.
Why?
I was offside on that goal.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, if you look back, I was just slightly offside. VAR would have stopped that. Whereas it probably wouldn't. I would have scored a few more with the ones that I wasn't offside on. But yeah, so Man United, obviously they given the trophy after the game, and for us little Blackpool going there, for us playing, we matched them up until I scored, and then got them angry.
They brought Michael Owen on then, did they?
Michael Owen, Giggs, and someone else, and you're just thinking, looking at the players that they're bringing on, and I think he took me and Brett off, and we brought on Matty Phillips and what was the Australian left back?
Carney.
Carney on. So
imagine if he'd have replaced you with James Beattie.
I know. Yeah. That's obviously the difference in the standard that we're bringing on you know, well, obviously Matty Phillips has gone on had a great career, but I think he was only 18, 19 at the time and inexperienced, and that was one of the things that killed us a little bit, because you took our experience off to bring on kids or people who hadn't played, and we sort of sat back and let them come on, and we couldn't quite absorb the pressure. It was probably the only time that I've seen him go defensive. You know,
Everton away. Did it Everton away as well? Do you remember? Yeah, but we were winning, weren't we? And as soon as Blackpool went defensive,
Yeah.
you knew we were goosed.
Yeah, we just couldn't. And as you say, he took me and Brett off, put them two on, and we just lost all momentum and ended up just sitting back fighting for our lives. And unfortunately, we couldn't keep them out.
Okay, just before we move on to the fans' questions, it's great to see you back in football, Fletcher, at Nantwich. How's that going?
Yeah, it's an eye-opener. Obviously, I started at Bangor in the Welsh Prem and managed the Europa League for them and stuff, things like that, which not many people can say. But it's good. I'm enjoying it, being back on the grass, coaching and managing and that. So, you know, it's just the little extra things that you have to do non-league, as we were saying.
Like wash your own kit?
Yeah.
You're not used to that though, aren't you?
They get the kit washed for them. They get all the training kit washed.
Even
for
at
them.
Nantwich?
Nantwich, yeah. We look after them that way. But it's an eye opener. The difference, obviously, in levels. So today we played a team in our own league, and you know there's like the Man City of our league, where they're paying far more money than what other teams can play and stuff, and it shows in the standard of players that they can attract. So, you know, similar to Blackpool at that time, we're trying to get up and keep on that level. So.
Right, all the best, Fletch, anyway. So, guys, just before we wrap up and move on to the next section, if anyone out there likes to ask Fletch a question, I'll feed a mic under.
Just while we're on about Nantwich.
Good to see you back in town, Gary. What level are you at? Are you Northern Prem or?
Yeah, Northern Prem, yeah, so
So
load of confidence.
here's a scenario, and I don't want to punch down, because there might be friends and family here, but if your keeper gets injured and Richard Kingston's agent rings you up in Monday morning, what do you do? Do you take the call?
No comment.
Says enough, doesn't it? Best of luck with it anyway.
Cheers, thank you.
We try to dodge around the subject, but he's done some bad ones in our time, haven't we?
Yeah.
Anyone else, guys? Come on, don't be shy.
You mentioned, Gary, the idiosyncrasy.
Come up to the mic, young man. Pick the mic up. What's your name? David, Mike's there. David, Mike's there, yeah. Speaking to the mic.
No, Gary was talking about the idiosyncrasies
Sorry enough, it's on a cable.
of Ollie as manager. And with all the managers that he's played under, I just wonder how important a manager is to the team and the team's belief in the manager.
It's a great question, and it's massive. The one thing, obviously, that we haven't mentioned was at one point in the 09 season, I think after 8 games I got injured. I think I'd scored 6 in the first 8 games, and I was out for about 4 to 5 weeks. Come back, and during them 4 to 5 weeks, Holloway had signed. There was J. Manuel Thomas, John Joe Shelby, signed all these players, and I, for the first 2, obviously, I think it was about 6 weeks in all, and wasn't really playing. So I told Ollie, obviously, I want to go out and play, and I was meant to go out on loan. And basically that was it for the rest of the season. I was going out on loan, arranged it to Doncaster. Spoke to him on the Friday. He said, yeah, we'll sort it out after the weekend. On the Saturday, I think 4 of the attacking players got injured. I hadn't played for 8 weeks, got into training on the Monday, expecting to be signing to go out on Doncaster on loan, and it was the Middlesbrough away game. As I say, I'd only trained for 2 weeks, hadn't played a game for 8, and I was starting for against Middlesbrough and scored 2. We won 3-0, and that was it. Then the next day, Holloway called me in. Before the game, he said when obviously other players were back fit that weekend, I could go out on loan. But the next day, he got called in, and he was like, "You're going nowhere. You're starting again on Saturday, and you're back in the team." So, it just goes to show how things could change if just them little things didn't happen. If them players had never got injured, I wouldn't have been back in, and I would have been out on loan somewhere else. So it's just a little bit different. But as I say, the belief that we had in Holloway and the belief that he had in us was magnificent. We'd run through brick walls for him. He was probably the best man manager that I've played under. He knew exactly what the players wanted, what the players needed, whether that was to train, to go down to the CAF and not train just to get the lads together, or go to the pub or whatever. He knew exactly what he wanted at the right time, and that's probably his greatest strength, that he could empathise with the players in how they felt or what they needed.
How does that compare with the other managers that Blackpool have had in recent times?
Well, for one, Simon Grayson, I think we used to have bets on how long he'd actually be in the room for before a game, because he'd come in, he'd name the team, and 90 seconds after he'd been in, he'd be back out, and he'd be locking his door because anyone who weren't starting, you'd want to go and ask why, but he just didn't like confrontation. Whereas Holloway was all about, if you want to speak to me, I'll speak to you, I'll be honest with you as long as you're honest with me, and that's little different things there. Michael Appleton, obviously he was only here for 30 days, but 2 days before he left, he was getting treatment and obviously couldn't play in the game. He's accusing me of being tapped up, and then 2 days later he's on a plane to India to take the Blackburn job. So, just little things like that. It's just, that's what happens. And managers, as you say, Holloway was honest with everyone, and that's what you want from a player. If your manager's honest with you, then that's the main thing, and that was again what he was really good at.
Excellent. Right. I think we'll move on to the next section. So, guys, as ever, thanks ever so much for coming this evening. I'm sorry there's not more people to see it, but we really appreciate you coming and wish you all the very best in your future career. So thanks very much, Gary Taylor-Fletcher. Right, I'd like to invite Raggy to the stage now. Nick, Mitch, and Tim. Now, Raggy, if you want to go next to Tim there.
So this is litigation court.
Litigation court. Right, Mitch, do you want to go here?
Right, I don't know who's left me in charge. Mistake here, isn't it? Right, so Tim and Raggy, I suppose a question for both of you. How did you both find out you were being sued? What was it for? And how did you feel initially? You got it, mate? I can't remember anymore. I can't remember. I don't know if it was me or Sharpie that was first. I can't really remember.
Frank Knight
Was he? Bit of a blur who was first, but obviously Frank Knight. I just got letters one day. I knew that I'd been writing certain things and saying certain things and making claims and accusations. And first I knew about it, I got home from work one day, opened the letter and said, "You're getting sued for £150,000 for defamation of character." And at the first I thought, I don't care, whatever, I'm not interested. And I think I just started hearing about other people getting sued, and then I just thought, right, I'm going to take papers with it, get it out there.
So that was the start of it for me.
So you kind of just met it head on. If you
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, and I don't think it was, well, definitely not. Didn't know where it was going at the time. Probably didn't think it was that serious. Probably just thought, not interested in that. Little did we know how long that was going to go on for.
What about you, Tim? Because I can remember when your name came up, because I suppose this might be a slightly weird thing, because I hope you don't mind me saying this, but obviously I don't know you that well, but I've known of you for a while, and you've always had a reputation for being, I suppose, within all of everything that's going on, you and Afro were more on the punk side of stuff, whereas BST were a bit more the sort of, not establishment, but a bit more that side. And I remember when you got sued, I remember thinking, it kind of brought it home to me what really was the level of their paranoia, because it was a bit like one of them, like North Korea or one of them countries where they sue the leader of the opposition or something like that, or in Russia where they disappear the opposition politicians. So how did you feel? Because you kind of...
Yeah, and when the North Korean style apology came out, that was sort of the culmination of about 6 months of it's quite a torturous period for me, to be honest. Probably because of the nature of the profession I'm in, and David's down there, and David's in the same profession. We probably realise the implications more than other people do. And I was actually on holiday in Cornwall with my family. And I got a call from Corsa Les, as he's affectionately known. Now, Les Golding, actually, I knew him quite well because he'd had a long-standing relationship with one of my business partners, and was also a processor, like a private investigator in the town, which a lot of lawyers use. So he rings me up, and I mean, I wasn't expecting it. I was chairing BST at the time, and he rang me up and said, "Oh, I've got a letter to give you." And I said, "Right." Which is a bit bizarre, because if you've got a letter to give somebody, you just put it in the post, don't you? Or you email it to them, or whatever you do. So he said, I want to come and give it to you. I said, well, I'm in Cornwall on holiday with my family. So I said, I'm home on Saturday. You can give it me then, but obviously I want to know what it was about. I'm worried. But he says, no, I want to come down now. And I'm saying, what do you mean, come down now? Owen wants me to get in a helicopter and fly down to Cornwall and serve you with these papers. And keeping it polite, I told him to F off, and he wasn't going to ruin the family holiday. But he was quite insistent, and he was like going, come on, Tim, it's a good gig for me, this. I want to go, basically, I think he was looking forward to getting a helicopter and getting paid to fly down to Cornwall. So I basically turned around to him and said, look, mate, I struggle to find where I'm staying with my sat-nav. So if you want to come and find me, come and try and find me, but I ain't going to tell you where I am. And in the end, the only way I got way around it was I rang a solicitor I knew, and I said, look, will you accept service of this letter? So they'd have to come down and ruin my family's holiday. And they did ruin my holiday, and actually I didn't realise at the time that they ruined my family's holiday, because I think they didn't know what it was, but they picked up on the fact that I was in a very bad place. And but yeah, and that's how I found out. I didn't know the content until I got back. So I was like quite traumatic few days, wondering what this was and what it would mean.
So when you got back, Tim, I'm guessing you had to meet with Owen and Carl at some point. Can you tell us about, and you as well, Raggy, your first meeting with them?
Well, there's an old adage which is, and again, going back to David again, David will know this expression. A lawyer acts for himself as a fool for a client, it's known as. What it means is that as a lawyer, you sometimes think you know what you do, and you think you know what's best for you, but generally you don't. You need that objectivity. So I decided, I know, and Raggy's no doubt going to tell us the way he approached it. I decided I was going to appoint someone to represent me, because I realised the gravity for myself. I was, I have a house, I had a business. Litigating with a megalomaniac millionaire isn't something that I particularly look forward to, because there was never, as a defendant, there's never an upside to this scenario. The best that's ever going to happen is the Colleen Rooney scenario, where you successfully defend yourself and end up only having to pay 30% of your own costs. So there's no upside, that you get vindication, that's as best you can get. So I appointed lawyers, and moving on from that, I then had a meeting. I was excuse me, shitting myself before I went in. But it actually, when Owen on a very superficial level, is quite a nice person to speak to, and it wasn't an unpleasant meeting, which, as against Steve Sharp, who was one of the other people who sued at the same time as myself and Raggy, he had his first meeting with Carl, and Carl tore him to ribbons in relation. It was quite a very, very unpleasant meeting he went into the first time. Ironically, I wish it had been the other way around with me, as we'll go on to discuss. But my meeting, we met in the boardroom. I don't know if Fletcher's been ever in there, but they've got like the old Nelson's flagship panels the room. But Owen's a strange individual. He convinced himself that the things I'd said was the cause of all his misfortune, and the reality was it wasn't. The bits they were pulling me on were things they pulled off my social media history. They'd gone delving right back. It was nothing current. But it was woe is me, and the reason I'm having the difficulties I'm having with fans is because of you, not because of the way he was acting, the way he was behaving, the way his family were acting and behaving. So you can't. He was trying to tell me that the team we had at the time was better than the team that Fletcher was in, which. But I'm sat there thinking I'm trying to get out of a very difficult situation here. But I'm dealing with somebody whose command of the reality is limited, and so I bit my lip. But to suggest that the team that we had in, what would it be, 2013? No, it was Riga's team. Riga's team in 2014. It was October 14 when I met. Was better than the team that got us promoted into Premier League. It's just absolute nonsense.
Right, you, Raggy.
I'm trying to think of the bit, because the first meeting I had with him was with Afro Man in that presidential suite. And
Great story.
I know, and I don't know how we got to this point, because we must have just refused to meet him or something, because we'd never met with him before. And obviously there was loads of stuff going on, but I barely remember half of it myself. But obviously I was posting under the name The Run Up the Hill on ABFTT. This is where it came from, with the acronym Truth. And I was just spouting all sorts of stuff off. Stuff that was largely true, I think, in the end, even though they deny some of it. But I couldn't prove it, could I? But we got this meeting to go to this presidential suite in the club. Never heard of it, didn't know what it was. So we went down this afternoon to the West Stand, the entrance you go into if you're going into corporate or whatever. And there was no one there. So we just went wandering around on our own. Come across this room, presidential suite, so this must be it. Went in, no one in. Table like this set up. One side, 4 chairs. The 4 chairs were on the side of the door, so as if to back us into the corner, and 2 chairs on this side. They had 4 bottles of water, no water on this side, like they were going to. So we just went in, right, move them waters, change the chairs round. We'll sit on that side with the water. They've got nothing. And we're having pictures and all sorts of selfies with pictures of Owen and everything. And then it was supposed to be Owen Carl, and we presumed Eric Shannon, who was their barrister coming in at the time. Anyway, when they came in, it was Eric Shannon, some solicitor, I can't remember his name or who he was. A very posh fella though. And Carl, and they said, Owen's not coming, which turns out he just wouldn't be in the room with Steve Reid at all. He just absolutely hated the man, and I loved it. But he set off starting off, and I saying, well, look, what happens here? And me and Steve, by the way, had gone in with boxes full of stuff and bags, and there was nothing in it, by the way. Just like, they turn up, these solicitors, don't they? You'll do it, won't you? Boxes full trying to scare your client. Well, we just have boxes everywhere. And there was nothing in them. And so he sat up, and I said, look, I don't know what's going on here. What is this? So this solicitor proceeded to tell us that it's mediation and blah, 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 blah. And what you have to do is come up with an offer for us, and then we'll discuss it and see if it's acceptable. Do you have an offer? So I said, yeah, we do, yeah. You give us £35,000 now, and we'll go away, and you'll never hear from us again. Well, they were laughing like that, and he's going, oh, no, a serious offer. I said, that is the offer. And he said, well, that's not enough. What are you doing? I said, well, listen, you've had 20 grand off Frank Knight, you wanted 10 grand off Tim Field, and you're 5 grand off Steve Sharp. So you give us 35 grand, I'll go give them the money back, and we'll sign something now, and you'll never hear from me or him again. And then you've got Carl just laughing and being a goon like he was. And whatever, the brief conversation in between that, and then Steve Reed, who's the Afro man, he's up on his feet because Carl's laughing. He goes, "You, Carl, you barcode tooth bastard. I'll see you in court. Dave, we're off. Come on." Picks up a box and storms out the door. And Eric Shannon's going, "Mr. Reed, come back, please." And I'm going, "No, that's it, it's done. Come on, back up the gear." And as we walked off down the corridor, you could just hear Carl Oyston just, and I mean like that, screaming like a wild man. So, and that was it. We were actually out of that building before the time that the meeting was supposed to start.
Unbelievable. Did he talk money at yours as well, Tim, at the first meeting?
Not at the first one. He basically said that, it was a slightly different meeting to the one just described, as you can imagine, because I was there with 2 lawyers. They were there with Manchester lawyer, and Carl, and then they had their in-house lawyers that they had as well. And he was sort of setting out his position. I was setting out my position, and namely that I wasn't, because they were basically saying I was accusing them of fraud. And I was saying, well, there's nothing I've said that can be construed that way. And so he said he wanted to go away and think about it. And then ironically, it went very, very quiet after that. And and sometimes it's a little bit like the keeping you waiting bit. It's all mind games with them. And I remember, do you remember the 53-minute walkout game against Cardiff, which was the last Sky game? On the morning of that game, obviously Jez couldn't make it tonight, but he would have had stories about this. But we had the headline in the Gazette of "We Are Not Thieves," and it was about 7 or 8 weeks after my settlement meeting, and everything in there was a retort to the things I've been saying in the meeting and in the response to the original protocol letter of claim that I got in for the defamation claim. Which that cost me a fortune because I had a barrister involved and all that business. So I saw that, like my heart sank that day. And I remember Dave Horn, who used to boost the badges in the corner, coming up to me saying, "Tim, you don't look good." And it wasn't good. I wasn't in a particularly good place. It was a quite difficult time for me because I realised then that it wasn't going away. This was going to continue. And ironically, I didn't hear anything else from them officially until about 2 days before Christmas. So bearing in mind that this meeting was in October, it's virtually 3 months later. So like every day, I'm ringing the lawyer saying, "Have you heard anything? Have you heard anything?" And it was the same with Frank Knight as well. And Frank Knight is retired, at least had a day job to go to. It drove Frank Knight to distraction. And I mean, 2 days before Christmas, I got an offer letter. And they thought it was going to ruin my Christmas. But actually, it made my Christmas because I knew what I was dealing with then, and all of a sudden the dynamic changed because it was the not knowing what I was dealing with that was actually really doing my head in and causing me lots of sleepless nights. And I kept it from me. I shouldn't have done. I kept it from my family because I wanted to offer a solution. Yeah. And I always thought that solution would come quicker, but they dragged it out. And so when the offer came, actually, it was a relief because I knew it wasn't going to lose. It wasn't a nice offer, but it meant that I knew I wasn't going to lose my job, and I wasn't going to lose my home, and I wasn't going to lose my livelihood, which I could have done if I'd gone. My lawyer was talking about, and I think this, with hindsight, is probably conservative, £250,000 to defend the claim, and if you lose, you pay the other side's costs as well. And I think it would have been more than that. I mean, we've seen with Valeri how much it took Valeri to scrape below the veneer of the way in which the business has been operated, to prove and to show what I was actually saying and what Raggy was saying was actually manifestly true. And we've seen it with, I would use it, keeping the football, well, it's not football link, but footballish link, the Vardy-Rooney trial. You've seen how much money got spent there. And this is what it's about, because what people don't realise is there's a reverse burden of proof in these defamation claims, where if you say something about somebody else, you've got to be able to prove that what you're saying is manifestly true. But they have all the information to prove it, and the Oystons had all the information to prove it. I couldn't prove it. I was talking about the training ground and saying that, as far as I'm concerned, buying the travel lodge, the training ground, buying the travel lodge for £650,000 and then selling it back to the club for £6.5 million was inappropriate, and that they had said that was defamatory. But I don't have the information actually to deal with that issue. So I have to get it off them, and to get it off them, imagine getting stuff like that off the Oystons, how difficult it would be.
No chance, yeah.
So, Raggy, we've heard in depth a sort of a legal point of view from Tim, but you and Steve took a slightly different tack to Tim, and not only did you decide to defend yourselves in court, which was frankly heroic, but you also, the moving of the bottles of water and the fake briefcases were just really the start of a kind of campaign of what you might call guerrilla action.
Oh, it was we'd just waged mental war on them, haven't we? And thought mayhem's going to be the way forward here. Now, a few things here. I never met Steve Reed before. Steve Sharp actually said, look, if you're going to go and defend yourself, I've got a friend who briefly knows his way around this kind of stuff, and took me around to Steve Reed's house. And I never left his house for the next 3 years, I don't think, 2 years, and we were like two peas in a pod. We just decided, here we go, and don't make the decision now and then, things change as you go, don't they? But we decided that here he goes, and I think if we look back now, when I talk to Steve, it's like, dear me, you all know Steve, don't you? He's a crazy guy, but he's brilliant. We were just taking each other on, because I was up for it. I didn't own any property, and neither did he, and we had nothing to lose. So by the time we figured that one out, and it's like, right, we're just going to cost these a fortune now. And there was incidences of, and I'm not going to, I just know about what things happened. There was a lot of damage done to the Oystons financially through, I don't know, windows, say, here and there, going in. And it used to drive him crazy, but he drove them crazy, Steve Reed, because he would never stop. And there's just one thing about it, because I was only telling someone this before, because it sort of gets missed out of a lot of things, and you can go on Google now and put it in, and you'll see it there in the papers, but people forget it happened. There was an incident with a gun with Steve Reed and Carl Oyston, and let me tell you what happened, because I had to go and see the CCTV in the High Court of this in the end. Bizarrely, I don't even know how it came about, but I come back off my honeymoon, and I didn't take my phone with me, because it was like, my wife's had enough, like, I need to just knock it on the head for a week, and leave my phone at home. When I got back, the first message I had on my phone, voice message was, Dave, we've got him. He's tried to shoot me. Steve Reed, I'm like, what? So I ring you up, what's happened, Steve? I've got down that ground to have paperwork in for Jez Smith, because I'm representing him now. Right. And he's got a shotgun out of his car, and he's trying to shoot me, was his words. I'm like, what? Well, we need to get this going. Let's phone the police. So he's phoned the police. I was at Steve's house when the police came round, and they were like, he was giving him a statement, and they're asking me for a statement, but I'm saying I wasn't there. But I'll tell you what he's told me, and there's a load of weird stuff around it. We found ourselves in the High Court somehow, because they'd started to sue him then as well. And then they're going through this, and they want it squashing, and they're saying, who have you sent all this to? Because we used to report it to every newspaper we could, things like that, just to cause maximum mayhem for them. And they're saying to me, well, you've put a statement in, but we've got the CCTV footage. We don't think Mr. Reed's in a good frame of mind to view the CCTV, because he had all these documents about having PTSD, and they were saying it's going to seriously affect him if he views it. Can you view it instead? So I went in the back with Eric Shannon and the judge, I can't remember who it was, to show me the CCTV. And I look at it and think, that's not what happened, Steve, is it? Carl, listen, Steve was there. Carl did get out of his car with a shotgun, but he was cocked up and over his arm. At no point did he point it or look like he was going to shoot Steve. You can argue, as we were, he shouldn't have a gun anyway. But then they're saying to me, would you like to change your story now? And I said, no, I'll stick by my story. Because I was just getting told off people, they're going to have to go to court again, it's going to cost more money. So he's just like, how much are you going to cost them next time? There'll be another £5,000 if you go to court again. Right, I'm not changing my story. I've got to go to court again.
I think it's funny and quite bizarre, but equally, what I think is probably the most important thing in this is that what Afro and Raggy were doing was distracting Owen in particular, I think, from what he should have been doing, which was dealing with Valeri. He seemed, rather bizarrely, he seemed to spend more time suing fans and particularly going after you two, because you were fighting fire with fire, than actually dealing with what was the big issue lurking in the background, and which was coming to the fore in 2017, which ultimately proved to be the downfall. So the guerrilla tactics in the way deflected. His focus went off where it should have been completely, and I think when you look back, I would say that's where your contribution is. I think your contribution is that you distracted them, particularly Owen, massively.
Yeah, I think, listen, I agree. And it was just a small piece like everyone else. It's like the Saturday nights were doing, like the fans were doing, just not going to games, just by people constantly. I mean, you said it sprayed all around the town. I used to know Blackpool. I always say this to people when I was growing up, and as a young lad, and I used to go to games and be walking home. And I remember people used to say, "Oh, if Blackpool played today, son, what score was it?" They had no idea who they were playing. And then I know we had obviously Gary and that team made Blackpool back on the map and everything, but it got blasted around the country, that Oyster. It made our club relevant, and it was all over the town, wasn't it? Everywhere. Anyway, sorry, I'm going off on a bit of one now, but we did play our part, but it was a small part. Everyone was playing the part. The whole town returned it. And looking back, I knew what we were doing, and I knew it wasn't going to go well. And even to the point of, I don't know if I've said it before, or I told you on whatever forums, but when I got the email through from the court saying you've been sued for 90, or you've lost, and you send it on an email, don't they, because they're heartless. Always on a Friday afternoon as well, just to ruin your weekend. It was 96,000. It was 41,000 to Owen, Carl, and the club. And 53,000. Sorry, 94,000. 53,000 in costs was the thing. But you got to go and have it read out in court, haven't you? So on the Monday, I had to go to court, but I never told a soul. Everyone was going, "Has it come through yet?" I said, "No." My missus, Steve, no, I didn't tell anyone. Went to Manchester, walking down that big long corridor where they all were outside ICO with all his entourage, and I just sat on the chair. And Eric Shannon comes over and like, "Oh, well, Mr. Ragazzino, just on your own today?" I said, "Yeah." "Do you think I'm bringing everyone down here for you lot to have me laugh?" He said, "Well played, by all your security, let's get into court." And that was it. Just laughed at him, really. Just said every credit, give him a round of applause, and I'll see you tomorrow when we start again on you. And that was that.
How much of that 96,000 have they had?
Oh, minus when you consider how much damage we've done to him. Not a penny.
With hindsight, Raggy, obviously you mentioned your wife had enough at one point and you didn't take your phone. It must have stressed you out, though.
Yeah, well, sorry, I lost my job, didn't I?
Yeah.
I don't know if people, we'd sent an email that, listen, in hindsight, if I read it to you now, you'd all think, dear me, you can't say that. And we couldn't, could we? But we got entrenched and we were saying a lot of anything that could hurt him. And I'm sure he carried that email around with him, showing every man and his dog. But I made a mistake, hadn't I? Because I couldn't get on my own email at work. I'd sent it from a work's email to Steve. And him, being the technophobe he is, just forwarded it on instead of copying and pasting it, forwarded it on with my company details on. Next minute, my phone's ringing in the office. It's Carl Winston, isn't it? He says, "You've fucked up now, son, haven't you?" And that was the way we went, I ended up losing my job for that. But listen, my wife was my biggest friend, staunch, love her to pieces, couldn't ever have done it without her. And, there was a couple of points during all that where I did say to her, "Do you want me to go and get out of this? We'll go and see about getting out." And one thing that stopped it was Frank Knight getting. That's why I think Frank Knight was late, because I remember her saying to me, "Oh, carry on now, they're suing the pensioner."
His settlement was later, but they'd actually they'd started on him first.
Right, but it wasn't sort of public knowledge, I don't think, was it? Because when it came out, I remember coming home and saying, "Don't stop now, just get into these." They can't.
Just by the way, we didn't pick Frank Knight out randomly. Frank Knight took them to task over what happened in the playoff final in 2012 when a lot of West Ham fans had got in the Blackpool end, and he'd taken them to the football ombudsman, and they'd got an absolute rollicking off their ombudsman. So surprise, surprise, when they start, they're targeting certain people, who they won't pay back on, and Frank was one of the people they won't pay back on. I was as well, because I'd put the asset community value registration on the ground and done various other things as well, and started organising the ethical boycott. So there was always a reason behind why they went for certain people. It was very rarely random. They had a litigation squad, as they called it, didn't they? That
absolutely true. They did. They were, and obviously Sharpie, myself, were just out there with all information, weren't we? And listen, loads of people were telling me information at that time, so people were just thinking, he's nuts, give him the information, he'll be out there, because that's what I was doing. I didn't care at the time. But a couple of little things. When you say it was difficult, it was. I mean, we got arrested for harassment, me and Steve. And although you're thinking along the lines, it's all football and it's all this, it starts to become criminal, and then you start talking, listening, like, I mean, there's a lot of things here. I'm saying, what's the outcome of this if I get done for this? And he's like, well, it's in the custodial bracket, because he was talking about hundreds of emails here, hundreds of texts, loads of communication with him. But all the way through, it was like, you've just got to get Carl Oyston's phone and get his emails. You'll see it all coming back the other way. And it transpired that just as we were about to go to trial, that's exactly what they found, wasn't it? And it was discontinued. The other one, this is a bit funny. I'd said numerous times to him along this route about me having fishing boats, I can't remember the names now, but top of the range, golf clubs, all sorts of cars. I'd say, you're never going to get your hands on my 2 houses, you're never going to do this, They obviously kept this in their head, because later on down the line, during when they brought that Martin Brown in, solicitor, well, after I'd lost and all this, and then they're trying to push for the money, aren't they? I had to go to the courts here, the county court, and I had to stand up under oath and be questioned on my finances. And when I got there that day, there was just the judge and the clerk of the court, I think, and this guy sat down beside. So she starts talking, so I was like, can I just ask who you are? And he said, oh, Martin Brown, the assistant solicitor. Right. So they say, right, can you just confirm your name? Yeah, David Ragazzino. Can you confirm your address? I said, no. Well, we need your address. I said, I'm not telling you anything in front of him, because I've had these goons at my door. So I'm not telling you my new address, no. So it's like, right, well, we need it. We'll move on. Right. Are you currently working? Yeah, I've got a new job. Yeah. Where are you working at? Not telling you. Not telling you in front of anything to do with his license. I'm not telling you. And then he goes, you have to tell us. And she's going, listen, Mr. Brown, you can't just say, listen, you sit down, Scabies face, right? Stay there, stay out of it. And he went through all these things, and they had this list, right? Do you own fishing boats? Do you own these golf clubs? Do you? No. I was telling her, listen, I sent him that email last April telling him all this rubbish. It's nonsense. Even to the point, and now I don't know what I said, I can't remember, but I will have said something. She asked me how many microwaves I own. I'm like, why did he want it? It's like, I must have told him I was a microwave bleeding king or somewhere. I'm running a big microwave business. I don't know what it was. But he was an idiot, that Martin Brown. And to be fair, I followed him out of that court that day all the way to his car, and I was reeling off his address and all his family's addresses and saying, wait till tonight when all them windows are going. All that stuff was going on. And he's like, are you threatening me? I said, no, but that's what we used to do to him. I knew everything about all of them, all the Ben solicitors that he had.
But also, ultimately, because they were giving it back to you, weren't they?
Yeah, this is sent people to my house.
And we had to have a fans whip round, didn't we, to raise the money so that you could petition for your own bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's right.
To stop the nonsense at the end of the day.
Stop it. And listen, I had they deny it all like they will do. But listen, I assure you, 3 o'clock one Sunday morning, Saturday night, my buzzer went. I lived on a second floor apartment, and it was Polish, let's say. You know, leave Oystons alone, you're a dead man. You know, I'm running down the stairs with my baseball bat. Go on, and they were off, and that was it. So they were fighting it back, weren't they, all the time. So, all good fun, though.
And I think, I mean, how long have we got, John? 10 minutes, right. So I'll go to this one. I think for both of you, it's obviously, you know, it's like been a difficult period, but then you've both kind of come out of it with things that you probably couldn't have ever envisaged at the beginning. So, like, you've been on the board of the football club, and then you're a massive part of the Armfield Club, which is a thing that you couldn't even have imagined happening, you know, back in those days. So, like, in a way, you've both gone down and then come out with like a real silver lining for both of you. Would you agree with that?
100%. Listen, we won, didn't we? Whatever happened, but we all won the day in the end, right? And we got our club back. There's no way in a million years, with that all happening, I'd be sat here with you guys. There's no way that I would know. I mean, everywhere I go in football, I know everybody. Everyone's always all right. Some people always say, there's two particular guys that come in the Armfield Club who just always buy me a drink when they come in. He said, I'm going to buy you a drink every time I see you for what you've done. Like, don't want that. We've all done just what we were prepared to do, but it's things like that all the time. Our fan base is the best in the world. Our club's the best in the world. That's why I don't like people talking it down or thinking we're little. Or we're the best, biggest club in the world. We stood there and fought for our club back. When you see it around the country now, there's at least a dozen, if not more, clubs trying to do the same thing. They'll never get there. I know they won't get there because they're not the same people as in this town and this fan base. And now it's brought it all together. Never ever will that happen to this football club again because everyone knows what to do instantly. Get the Afro man out.
The Sooner fans actually probably was the catalyst that probably created the scenario that allowed us to give that front to the Oysters where we actually went toe to toe with them, because no other owner's ever done that. I mean, it's not just Raggy, it's not just me, it's not just Afro. I got sued. I know of 16 different individuals who received letters of claim from that family, and that's unprecedented. I think Sheffield Wednesday did it once with one fan. They even got the guy who represented that fan in the Sheffield Wednesday case, where the Sheffield Wednesday dropped it last minute out of embarrassment, I think. But they got him to represent them. Do you remember when they got him to represent them because they thought that would give them an edge? But the reality of the situation was it was all just absolute nonsense. But what it did do was galvanise the Not a Penny More movement to the point where we could really just say, almost clear that ground out and make some pretty powerful statements. And yeah, I think, you know, I had a reasonable relationship with Valeri Bellicon and Caspers. I carried on doing what I was doing. We were all liaising, we were all speaking in the background, and between what Valeri was doing, what we were doing, we sort of created we created a perfect storm that led to that momentous day in London on the 6th of April 17, and then the appointment of Paul Cooper as the receiver, and again John, he's just left the room, hasn't he? But John always, because I always talked about the delicious irony of walking into that football club in the I think it was the 22nd of February and kicking them out of the club. That was probably will be the best day of my life. Getting rid of them. It didn't happen. It was difficult, as we all know. I probably haven't got the time to talk through all that tonight. But getting that call from Paul Cooper saying, "Come down to ground now, we're taking control," was a special call. And to be part of that, bearing in mind everything I knew he'd not just done to me, but done to a lot of people, and to the town, and to the fans, and to the club, and to the players. It was a special day, and then obviously that leads on to homecoming and everything that brought with it for everybody, which was probably for most people, when you talk about home games, it's probably the best home game that they've ever been to.
I doubt. Just one little bit, although whatever you need to ask, but do you remember the name Maxim Bakiev?
Yes.
There's no coincidence that when that name was mentioned, that's when Carl started carrying his gun around in the back of his car. His man, if you remember, he started carrying his shotgun and had a box made for it after the incident in the club. That name was told to me during the team, in which I got that to Carl and said, "You better watch out, this guy's coming for you." And so his name was mentioned recently, wasn't he? But I knew of him and I knew what he was about.
Maxim Bakiev was this is where this story gets so bizarre, and if anybody hasn't read it, read the book on how not to run a football club, because there is a section on this. But Bakiev bizarrely seems to have funneled some money from Kyrgyzstan into Blackpool Football Club, and his name for a long time kept on cropping up.
He's wanted for murder, isn't he? In Kyrgyzstan. That's why I used to use it with Carl all the time. Say, I'm just having a pint with my mate Maxine, right? And he's coming to see you.
But the Oysters tried to use this in the unfair prejudicial conduct action to argue that money had been brought into the football club that was tainted, and therefore the whole Valeri action was tainted. And this is how it became relevant, wasn't it? But Marcus Smith was having none of it. He just basically, every time they tried to raise it, he just basically knocked them down and said, not interested. And I think the fact that Marcus Smith was an Arsenal fan and a season ticket holder, and the fact that, you know, there's people in this room who were regularly at the court hearings in London in 2017. We had a presence there every day, not just a couple of people. There was decent numbers there every day, and nobody will ever. I'm a lawyer, and nobody will ever tell me that did not influence that decision. It most certainly influenced bringing in the receiver, because Marcus Smith said as much in his judgment. But I will never have it that decision was not influenced by the fact that we were there religiously every single day. We reported every day. We was, you know, there was an AVFTT thread of every single court day. All the lawyers and the you know, the people there supporting them, they all had the laptops open with AVFTT open on the laptops. It was incredible as a lawyer to sit at the back of a courtroom and see everybody watching AVFTT while what ultimately proved to be a £31 million court case was being played out in one of the biggest courts in the never mind the country but the world. Was you think, is this real? You know, it's like it is bizarre, isn't it?
How did you feel when you read out that amount? Because we were talking about it, and I was at work at the time and pressing PF5 or whatever every 2 minutes for the judgment. When it came up 31 million, that number hadn't even been considered or mentioned, had it, even by
Clifford Chance, who was
the best
representing
case
Valeri, had put forward about 4 or 5 different arguments as to how much Valeri should be awarded, and none of them went as high as that figure. And I think that again it reinforces why I think Marcus Smith was just. I think I think Owen's any chance of winning went when he decided that he was going to play the death card, which I know he played with you, and where he said basically, "Cannot hear. Can you speak up a bit? Can you speak up a bit?" So he ends up, again bizarrely, sat on the bench next to Marcus Smith, almost like a judge himself, wasn't he? I thought he was.
Well, if you remember rightly, when I was in court, he did the same thing, didn't he? And I picked my chair up and walked and sat next to him, and they're going, "You can't do that." And the judge said, "I'll allow it, just carry on."
So he's ended up, but Marcus Smith was clearly very uncomfortable about the fact that Owen was sat next to him on this. And in the London courts, they're quite raised up as well, so he was quite high up. And I know he was loving like the attention, but not realising actually he was alienating the judge at the same time. So listen, I will always have the utmost regard for Marcus Smith, and he's a fine lawyer, a fine judge, and he's a friend of Blackpool.
Totally agree. You want anything, Mitch, finish?
There's nothing more written on the sheet. Is this?
Anybody got any questions for Tim or Raggy?
Any questions at all to the panel? Raggy, Tim? Go on, Chris.
Have you guys had any more dialogue with the club about making this like an official podcast, like supported by the club?
So we did approach the club. We wrote to them in a sort of an official capacity about a year ago, suggesting a dialogue, and you know, we have conversations with them, and they just weren't interested at all, were they? We went via BST as well, but the club just weren't interested in any way, shape or form. We've had no real support this evening either, have we? I know Gaz was telling me that the ex-players get very little support from the club also. Charlie Adam, I believe, Fletch wanted to get a box, and you just quoted him full price. So it's a bit of a strange situation, isn't it?
I think the reality is it's monetarised, so everything is about. Listen, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying that everything is about what it can raise in the monetary terms for the football club. So where we might be looking at looking at it from a slightly different perspective, like an ex-player should get a box for cheap. They're just thinking, well, if I give a player a box for cheap, then we're losing so much money because we can otherwise sell that box, which is fine if you're selling a big box every single game. But if you're not, then, and I also think you've got to think about your heritage. Personally, I think you've got to think about your heritage. There isn't much recognition about anything that went on before Simon's appointment, or Simon's acquisition, I should say, of the football club, which I'm disappointed about, because we had this conversation last week, didn't we? It's in what went on from 2007 onwards, and particularly then what happened when Fletch and that team broke up, and what we then had to deal with is in our DNA, and it makes Blackpool what it is, and it makes the atmosphere at Blackpool what it is at the moment. And I think sometimes you've got to embrace that, not ignore it. But that's up to us. As a football club, I think they don't want to look at that. They want to look forward, not back.
I think I loved the point Raggy made on the podcast last week about it's like it is our unique selling point. It is the thing that differentiates us from every other club of our size in every other town of this size. When I was on holiday, I was speaking to 3 German fellas, and they said, "Oh, who do you support?" I said, "Blackpool." And he says, Holloway. And I said, "Well, yeah." And then I started telling them about the whole Oyston thing and what was going on. They were absolutely fascinated with it. You know, they were like, "So what happened next?" And you go, "Oh," and kind of telling my own sort of, bastardized version of the story, and they loved it. They were like, "Oh, I will look out for Blackpool. I will look out," and it is the thing that
it should be part of an induction to the football club. And I'm not saying all players that come in the club are all going to sit there, right? But they should do, in my opinion. But the management structure in that club should hear it and should know everything about it. And we should never hear comments from any of our managers saying, "We've got to remember who we are." Yeah, you remember who we are, but you need to know who we are. You don't talk us down as if we're little Blackpool. Remember who we are. No, we're not little Blackpool at all. We're a massive club. One of only 20 Ballon d'Or winners in the world played for this club, by the way. What a list that is. You don't see any Chelsea on there, Arsenal, Man City, Rangers, Celtic, Blackpool are on there. The most historic FA Cup final, the Queen gave the Queen's first football match. Anyway, and Tangerine, unique, and we got rid of the owners when we wanted to. It's a massive club, and it should be sold like that. And I can't stand hearing the words stay up, consolidation. I know they have to be pragmatic, but let's just. What's the aim at the start of the season? Win the league.
Yeah.
If you can't win it, come second.
And I think Fletcher will probably endorse this, because I think Holloway brings in that different mindset, doesn't he, when he comes in? Because he's not talking about staying up, he's talking about getting promoted, and he's talking about making players the best they can be, and taking teams on and winning games and making Blackpool look. And he did, and I think so. What you're saying resonates with me, because I think that's what we should be doing. We should always strive to the best you can be. And I'm personally disappointed that we don't recognise ex-players and also everything else that went on in more than we do. But at the end of the day, Simon's come in. He's put his money where his mouth is. He's stepped in. If anybody saved the club, it's him, because of course the receiver had to sell it. He would have sold it to somebody, and he may have sold it to somebody who may not have had Blackpool's best interests at heart. I remember Michael Bodenbrook saying when we had the meeting in the corner flag, we found a unicorn, i.e. a Blackpool fan who's actually got the money to buy this club, because they don't fall off trees, that's for certain. So I think we've got to, whilst it might not be the perfect ending that we were all looking for, I think we've got to realise that it's probably as perfect as it could be, take into account the fact we could have ended up with some ragged water.
Yeah, absolutely. It's far from in a bad place. We're in a great place. But what they're talking about the history, like say from 2007, about the spirit that our team had, that's built our club to where we are today, and then everything that went on through them years that built the fan base that we've got today. And that is what anyone coming into the club should know about. and then learn all the history of the club. And so Blackpool one of the most famous clubs in football, and it just winds me off. We're the best team in the country, with the best everything, and sell it. And we're in the Gold Coast, 3 piers, a tower, a pleasure beach, amusements everywhere.
And this fabulous venue that we're all set in now. Who'd have thought this evening?
Well, what do you do? I say to people at work all the time who live in Preston and Burnley, I say, listen, nice sunny night tonight. You go home, finish at 5 o'clock, get home, get changed, shower. What are you doing with your kids and your family? What, am I have a barbecue? Or am I go to the park? So guess what I'm doing? I'm taking my boy on the beach. He's going in the sea. We're going on the piers. Might take him to the Sea Life Centre. Going to all the arcades. We're going on Stanley Park. It's endless. It's a playground, isn't it? It's like our club. It's a bleeding roller coaster. And it's ace, and it should be sold as such. Not doing the town down like everyone else tries to do.
He needs to work for Visit Blackpool, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's after a job here. Right, guys, I think we'll call it a day there. So I just want to thank every single person who's come out to support us today. We know we may not be massive in number, but we're great in spirit. So thanks ever so much for all of you coming. Thanks to Raggy. It's been fantastic having you on. Maybe we'll do something again in the Armfield, get a few more bums on seats. And obviously thanks to Fletch and his family for coming over. We really appreciate your support, guys. So thanks everybody. I'll play the outro music.
I was already changed the world.